I will call to order our 2025 budget workshop. We will start off today with a flag salute, so if everyone can please rise. Place your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Alexander.
Here.
Mayor Kalfas.
Here.
Councilmember Ron.
Here.
Councilmember Schwank.
Here.
Councilmember Stewart.
Here.
All right, with that, we will move on to public comments. We will take both non-agenda and agenda items, public comments. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments today?
Mr. Mayor, we have no public comments on non-agendized items, and we have no public comments on any other portion of the agenda.
Thank you very much. We will move on to the joint meeting of the City Council, Temecula Community Services District, and successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency. Business item. Item number 1, review fiscal years 2026 through 2030 capital improvement program and fiscal year 2025 to 2026 annual operating budgets for the City of Temecula, the Community Services District, and the successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency. I will kick that off to City Manager, Mr. Aaron Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Why don't you run the video?
LA County is facing some serious budget cuts in the upcoming fiscal year.
Almost $1 billion, the deficit. What it translates into, as we're finding about from her budget, is about 1,600 people laid off. Building and safety, at least 30 more. It's pretty devastating.
And the budget includes $4 billion to pay off nearly 7,000 sexual abuse claims against county employees, mostly from probation camps and juvenile halls.
The city of Las Vegas is trying to get a lawsuit thrown out that accuses its city marshals of wrongdoing.
New tonight, the federal government reports that there has been a double-digit jump in American homelessness compared to last year.
According to the government's latest data, more than 770,000 people were unhoused in a single night in 2024, up 18% from the year before and the highest number ever recorded.
And San Jose is gearing up for legal battles over several major housing projects there. The city is trying to stop developers from taking advantage of a provision in a state law known as the builder's remedy. It basically allows developers to ignore local zoning codes if a city doesn't have a state-approved plan to meet its housing goals.
And we're on Kelton Road in Emerald Hills, and if you take a look behind me, you can see this is one of the big problems the mayor's been talking about, potholes in the street.
Those are two of the potholes that the so-called pothole vigilantes filled last week. And then they posted signs like this around the neighborhood to let people know of what they're doing and how they can donate.
We love the city. We hope they fill the potholes faster, and if they're not going to do it, we'll do it ourselves.
This is not us. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Those images and headlines are current. For 3 decades, this City Council and those that came before you prioritized the management of our finances and applauded and encouraged the wise investment of our capital expenditures. You also prioritize public safety, well-maintained parks and streets, and responsive government and professional staff. But those images are not us, because we have done so many things as part of our strategic planning that don't make the headlines, or sometimes are easy to overlook, or they're taken for granted because they are not sexy or exciting. But what they are the elements to a well-managed and blessed city, consistently delivering a safe, fiscally sound, and high quality of life enjoyed by our residents, our businesses, and the workforce. To name a few: prepayment to save on our pension obligations. We have set up 2 irrevocable trusts for pension and retiree health obligations, earning interest. We paid off the mortgage on the Civic Center, saving millions in interest. We paid off the mortgage on the newest Margarita Community Center, saving hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. We continued our affordable housing efforts, completed or under construction, that have now surpassed 900 units since incorporation. We've agreed to a 7-year payoff debt paydown strategy, saving millions of dollars. We have invested millions annually in our road network. We're investing in homeless prevention, diversion, and assistance, and mental health. We have limited our liability and legal exposure through contract partners, namely CAL FIRE and RSO. And we were one of the first cities in Riverside County to initiate a ballot measure for an add-on sales tax to improve and sustain the high quality of life we all enjoy. Although year over year we run a lean organization, the City Council allows us to take care of our employees with competitive wages, benefits, a flexible work schedules, and supportive organizational culture that's second to none. This is a reinvestment into the human capital. So again, those images, they're not us. And more importantly, past, present, and future will never be us. As you've heard me share for years, the City of Temecula has made the responsible management of its finances a core foundation. In fact, it is layered throughout the core values of the 2040 Quality of Life Master Plan that many of you helped develop within our community. Our city, the way it looks, the way it feels, the way it has been built out, the employees we track, that we retain, our work culture of humble excellence and corporate drive to provide the highest level of services and programs for a very deserving community. I believe, ultimately, reflect these 3 decades of prudent fiscal management and the region's best municipal workforce. We believe in these draft budgets this morning and the hard work that has gone into them, which we will highlight and reflect in the priorities outlined. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, and the residents in attendance or viewing this morning, the development of this year's budget was a bit different and more challenging despite our long-term fiscal planning. We've all recently felt the ups and downs of our national economy, the stock market, interest rates, federal and state policy changes, which all translate into greater uncertainty on how it will ultimately affect our revenue at the local level. This is our current environment. We have begun to see signs of major revenue sources trending down, and that has caused us to pause and once again build in relatively flat and conservative projections. We also received news in March that due to labor agreements executed in December by the Riverside County Board of Supervisors, our law enforcement contract rates would be increasing by 19.5% over the next 2.5 years, nearly 10% higher than we originally forecasted. Keep in mind, this is our single largest line item in the budget and represents a $2 million a year escalation, which is $10 million over the 5-year period. Shortly after, we received news that our county CAL FIRE contract would be increasing by 25.6%. While public safety is and should remain our top priority, these relatively last-minute adjustments required the budget team and all city department heads to once again pivot, and we went back to the drawing board in late March, and we began rebuilding the fiscal year 25-26 operating budget under these new realities. I'm very proud of our directors and non-safety departments who helped us balance our budgets and meet our fiduciary responsibilities. Another area I've been keenly focused on is our planning, design, and delivery of capital projects, the CIP budgets, and associated project management. We spent considerable time this spring reviewing all current projects and all their sources of funding, many of which have been escalating in price or the city's needs and/or priorities may have changed since first being introduced. The underlying effort was also designed to fully fund shortfalls of CIP projects that we believe need to get across the finish line, even if some partially funded projects need to be deferred. You will hear more about this later in today's presentation, and we are encouraged to deliver some very needed, long-awaited, and community-centric projects to our citizens in the next 12 to 24 months. Related, one of our actionable recommendations this morning for the City Council is to schedule a special CIP workshop with some dedicated time and attention in late summer to focus on priority delivery, timing, and continued appropriate funding of capital projects that are important to this City Council and the community. When I step back and look at the big picture over a 5 to 10 year span, the other area I'm very focused on and want to bring to the City Council's attention is the Temecula Community Services District. I've watched TCSD grow exponentially over the past 3 decades, essentially growing up with the city itself, and the programs, events, and services TCSD offers have become a true hallmark of Temecula and even recognized and valued by all in the region. The TCSD is funded primarily by Measure C parcel tax and Measure S. It has always been understood, accepted, and a reality that TCSD would be required to be subsidized by the general fund or Measure S. As we forecast out in the coming years, we can see the emerging trend of expenses outpacing the generating revenue and thus leaving less dedicated revenue to cover future escalating costs of public safety. We intuitively know this council and future councils will not want to arrive at that place, and as such, we need to begin incrementally changing the paradigm here, adjusting expectations, sometimes saying no, or sometimes saying not now, and deferring to intentionally make course corrections over the next 5 years. Indeed, any lasting change occurs incrementally, and you will see this in later slides. Again, not a crisis of unsolvable proportion, but something we must all accept, understand, and buy into for the next 5 years. One of the actionable steps this morning is that we would like to propose the City Council Strategic Fiscal Ad Hoc Subcommittee, who reviews such items, be tasked with working with staff over the next 8 months to begin developing such a work plan for the City Council to address both sides of the TCSD ledger. With those 3 points made, public safety costs, CIP prioritization, and a TCSD work plan, and central to our current fiscal conditions and focus, I am pleased to share again this year that the city's operating budget is balanced, the community service budget is balanced, and we have also projected a balancing of our 5-year forecast. And the CIP remains very aggressive and well-funded. Our public safety staff levels are intact, our debt paydown strategy and annual investment to pay off is on track, and all of our reserves are fully met. This remains a very fortunate and special story. I've heard the City Council discuss a broader philosophy and desire to achieve a return on our investment, or ROI. And I believe when you look at many of the capital projects we have recently delivered to the community, there is a tangible ROI that can be measured through a higher and better quality of life, i.e. French Valley Parkway Phase 2 and shorter commute times, or a fiscal return on our investment like building a regional sports park, pickleball complexes that attract sports tourism dollars, and more. We will remain mindful of this and believe we approach this budget year prudently and are recommending sound fiscal investments like we have in previous years, running government like a large private business, a municipal corporation. Today, our executive staff, representing the exceptional efforts of their respective departments, will discuss the city's strategic planning efforts, walk you through the budget process, engagement sessions, and provide the highlights of the annual operating and capital improvement program budgets. Director of Finance Jennifer Hennessy will summarize the proposed operating budgets for the general fund and Measure S. Captain Mark Regali will present the sheriff's budget and highlight the department's special teams. Battalion Chief Ryan Lubin will present the fire department budget. Director of Community Services Erica Russo will discuss the TCSD budget highlights, programs, and events. Director of Public Works Ron Moreno will present the capital improvement program budget. And Deputy City Manager Luke Watson will provide an update on the city's affordable housing projects. And finally, we will close with topics we've identified as future discussion items to delve into further over the next few months. As you will see throughout today's presentation, the city's financial position remains healthy, with all funds balanced and all reserves fully funded. While we are fiscally balanced for the next 5 years, we will also spotlight some concerning trends on the horizon and will be recommending specific actions to address these concerns. Strategic planning is foundational in the city's planning efforts to ensure that the priorities of the council and the community remain at the forefront and are reflected in the city's operating budget and our CIP. Projects and programs proposed in the budget and CIP are consistent with the city's core values that are identified in the Quality of Life Master Plan, or the QLMP, which was recently updated in 2022. The QLMP identifies the city's 7 core values, including a healthy and livable city, economic prosperity, safe and prepared community, sustainable and resilient city, transportation mobility and connectivity, accountable and responsive city government, and the newest additional core value of equity. Throughout the budget and CIP documents, all projects, programs, objectives, and performance measures link back to these 7 core values to ensure we are delivering on our priorities outlined by the council and the community. The Long Range Planning Division has developed a 4-phase multi-year process to update the general plan. Phase 1 is complete and included updates to the housing and public safety elements. Phase 2 is complete and included in the updated QLMP and the city's climate action plan. Phase 3 is complete and included the updated complete streets policy, a fiscal land use study to analyze the city's remaining development capacity and market absorption potential for residential, commercial, and industrial development. The final phase is to work with a general plan advisory committee to update the general plan, our circulation element, and an EIR over a 2-year timeframe. The committee has selected a consulting firm to lead us through this phase, and that contract will be presented to the City Council for consideration next Tuesday at our May 27th council meeting. In December 2022, the council approved a multi-year strategy to pay down the city's debt and unfunded liabilities within a 7-year timeline. To date, the Margarita Recreation Center and Civic Center loans have been paid in full, creating an annual savings of $2.2 million. The city's OPEB, or retiree health liability, has also been paid in full. Over the past 3 years, the city has paid $29.7 million towards the CalPERS unfunded pension liability, cutting the outstanding liability in half. I'm pleased to say that we are still on track to be completely debt-free by June 30th, 2029. As mentioned in my intro, the city prides itself on our fiscal stewardship and the ability to take the necessary measures to ensure long-term fiscal solvency. This year is no different. As part of our budget process, a 5-year projection is prepared and presented in the budget document. And while we are fiscally balanced all 5 years, you will see that the gap between revenues and expenditures is closing. To better understand the trends before us, we extrapolated our long-term fiscal plan over a 10-year period, which revealed a structural imbalance starting in year 7. While this 10-year plan is filled with many assumptions, its main purpose is to provide us a planning tool so we can model the long-term impacts of decisions made now. The sooner course corrections are made, the better the fiscal outlook becomes. As we've done in previous budget years, we've utilized this new 10-year plan to create a sensitivity model to illustrate the impacts near-term decisions have on our long-term fiscal solvency. Director of Finance Jennifer Hennessy will now walk us through the sensitivity analysis and model a couple of financial scenarios and their resulting impacts.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. As Aaron mentioned, long-term fiscal planning is critical to the fiscal sustainability of a city. The 10-year fiscal outlook illustrated on this slide shows a number of concerning trends. The first is that revenues are not growing at the same pace as expenditures. Revenue growth ranges between 1.4 to 3.3% per year, with some ups and downs programmed into the model to replicate a typical business cycle. Operating expenditures, however, are growing steadily between 3 to 5.3% per year. And this is very typical as most labor contracts contain cost of living adjustments and merit increases. Additionally, the cost of health benefits, materials, services, and supplies typically rise with inflation each year. The second concern is the result of revenues not keeping pace with expenditure growth, which causes a structural imbalance starting in year 7 of the 10-year plan. Finally, because of the structural imbalance, by year 9, we are unable to meet the 25% reserve requirement as outlined in the budget policies. To illustrate the 10-year plan graphically, this slide shows the revenues in the green bar, expenditures in the blue bar, and the operating surplus and/or deficit shown in the black line. At the point where expenditures surpass revenues, we are structurally out of balance. This scenario number 1 plots the status quo 10-year plan, including the anticipated increases in revenue and expenditures necessary for public safety staffing to keep pace with population growth and to accommodate the anticipated reduction in the CAL FIRE work week. For illustration purposes, the coming slides will show the impacts of different arbitrary financial scenarios and how these measures change the timing of the structural imbalance. Scenario 2 builds on the first scenario, plus the inclusion of a 20% increase in TCSD program revenue. You can see that the revised surplus or deficit line shown in blue, shown in blue, and an increase in TCSD program revenue would shift the structural deficit out by 1 year. The third scenario changes the growth assumptions to the two major revenue sources, sales tax and Measure S. If these revenues grow by just 0.5% more per year, the structural deficit shifts out to year 9. And finally, scenario 4 includes all the measures shown previously, plus a change in the public safety staffing levels to keep them steady throughout the 10-year plan. Again, this is only for illustrative purposes and to show the magnitude of smaller fiscal measures and larger fiscal decisions. By adding this fourth component, the structural deficit shifts out to year 10. Although the model still shows a looming structural imbalance, there's a decade of cushion between now and then, giving decision makers plenty of time to make structural changes if desired. The budget process begins each year in January with a review of the current year's budget and the development of revenue projections in the preliminary 5-year forecast, which serves as the baseline budget for the ensuing fiscal year. In early February, staff held the operating budget and CIP kickoff meetings with all departments. Additionally, staff presented the City Council the mid-year budget update, which reflects the updated fiscal outlook for the current year's budget. Throughout March, staff held budget engagement sessions with each of the city's commissions to obtain feedback on community priorities. The commission members' feedback is included in the proposed budget, and we have a separate set of slides coming up that summarizes their feedback. In April, staff conducts several internal review meetings, which culminate in the development of the proposed budget and capital improvement program being presented today. Any changes to the proposed budget and CIP that come from our discussions today will be incorporated in the final operating and capital budgets that will be on the City Council agenda at the May 27th meeting. And in June, the final adopted budget and CIP documents are printed and distributed, as well as posted online for electronic viewing. During the budget engagement sessions this year, the city commissioners participated in a real-time interactive survey with questions like those asked in the Community Satisfaction Survey. The first survey question asked the commissioners to rate the overall quality of life in Temecula, to which they overwhelmingly responded that it was excellent. Next, they were asked how satisfied they were with the job the city is doing to provide services, and 100% of the respondents said they were either very or somewhat satisfied. The third question was an open-ended one and asked the respondents to name the top stores they'd like to see come to Temecula. And no surprise, Whole Foods ranked the highest with 11 votes, followed by a tie between Bass Pro Shop and REI. IKEA received 3 votes, and it's safe to say that all would be welcome additions to our local economy. The next question asked how satisfied they are with the city's efforts to improve traffic circulation. All respondents noted that they were either very or somewhat satisfied. And with the recent completion of the French Valley Parkway Phase 2 project along the I-15 through Temecula, we're confident this rating would increase, as we've heard such positive feedback from commuters. Question 5 was another open-ended question, asking for the top things that they like the most about living in Temecula, to which safety ranked highest, followed by both the city's parks and events, then restaurants. And question 6 was the converse of 5, and asked for the 1 or 2 things they liked the least. Almost unanimously, traffic ranked the highest with 25 votes, and then homelessness ranked second with 4 votes. And lastly, commissioners were asked to choose one signature event to attend each year, and the popular Christmas parade was the favorite with 40% of the votes, followed by the Rod Run, then the 4th of July fireworks and parade, and finally the New Year's Eve grape drop. We appreciate the commissioners' participation in this survey and welcome their feedback. We'll now switch gears and focus on the upcoming fiscal year 25-26 proposed budget, starting with the general fund. The general fund serves as the city's primary operating fund and provides the funding required to deliver public safety, public works, community development, and administrative services to the city of Temecula. General fund revenue is projected to reach $114 million, with sales tax contributing 40% of total revenue. Expenditures are projected to be $107 million next fiscal year. Transfers to other funds includes a $500,000 contribution to the capital improvement program for the general plan update project. And as part of the debt and liability paydown strategy, Aaron mentioned previously, $6.3 million in available fund balance will be combined with $2 million from the city's pension trust to further pay down the unfunded pension liability, which will generate cumulative ongoing savings. The general fund expenditures are projected to increase by 8% to $106.7 million, of which 56% is dedicated to public safety. Public Works makes up 20% of the general fund and is expected to increase 0.5% due primarily to labor agreement adjustments, offset by savings in consulting cost. City administration makes up 15% and is expected to increase by 5% due mostly to labor agreement adjustments. And community development makes up 8% of the general fund and is expected to increase by 5.7% due to labor agreement adjustments and reclassified positions. And the non-departmental category includes payments for the annual retiree medical contribution, CalPERS replacement benefit, continuity staffing, all of which are offset by an estimated $3.5 million reduction in the city's CalPERS pension cost as a result of the liability paydown strategy. And I'll turn the presentation over to Lieutenant Vic Pearson, who's sitting in for Captain Mark Regali, who will present the sheriff's budget.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. The Riverside County Sheriff's Office budget of $48.5 million reflects an 11% increase over the prior year. The budget includes an estimated 9.5% increase in the sheriff's contract rate due to the ratification of a new labor agreement negotiated between Riverside County and the Riverside Sheriff's Association. Additionally, the budget includes the replacement of motorcycles to support the dedicated motor deputies assigned to traffic enforcement. Staffing levels provided by the contract total 117 sworn deputy sheriffs and 18 community service officers, exceeding the target staffing ratio of 1 sworn deputy per 1,000 residents. The city contracts with the Riverside Sheriff's Office to provide comprehensive law enforcement services and dedicated sworn positions which serve as command officers and various special teams, including the recently created robbery burglary suppression team, which has made a significant impact in reducing crime and increasing safety in our city. This team consists of 1 sergeant, 1 investigator, 1 corporal, and 2 deputies, and a CSO, with the sole purpose to identify and apprehend suspects committing residential and commercial burglaries and robberies in our city. The Metro team ensures safety in Old Town by providing 20,000 hours of dedicated law enforcement service per year. Centrally stationed in the Old Town Temecula Sheriff's Substation, the Metro team has decreased response times to calls for service and provide more patrol hours in Old Town because they begin and end their shifts in Old Town. They are no longer tethered to lengthier commute times to and from the Southwest Station. The CORE, or Community Outreach Resource and Engagement Team, shares space inside Temecula City Hall alongside other important city community teams. CORE will continue to address quality of life issues by working closely with the city's code enforcement, building and safety, TCSD, information technology, and fire department, as well as playing an integral part in the safety planning for all major events occurring in the city, such as Rod Run, 4th of July, and Christmas Parade. In addition to these teams, the city also contracts for deputies assigned to special enforcement teams, school resource deputies, mall deputies, and a very solid traffic team. I will now turn the presentation over to Battalion Chief Ryan Lubin to present the fire budget.
Mr. Mayor, council members, the fire department budget for next year is projected to be $26.4 million. However, with the structural fire tax credit of $12.4 million is deducted by the county, leaving the net cost to the city of $13.9 million. The 2024-25 fire budget includes several reversals of one-time CalPERS reduction imposed by the state, causing a larger than typical budgetary increase over the current year. The budget includes staffing levels of 4 firefighters per fire engine and ladder truck with a total of 79 fire personnel, including the 2 new fire inspectors added during the mid-year year budget update in February. The fire department will continue to meet Cal OSHA requirements of 2 in, 2 out for firefighter safety during structural fire and serve as a pivotal factor in the department's ISO rating of a 2, which places the city at the top 7% nationwide for structure fire suppression capabilities. For the emergency management budget for next year is projected to be $786,000. The budget includes continued development of community resilience strategies and training, support for the 57-member Temecula Citizens Corps disaster preparedness, which includes an alternative emergency operations center, which is planned at the Temecula Library with upgraded technology, the development of a citywide mass evacuation plan, and the implementation of national qualification system for EOC responders. The budget also includes the ongoing commitment to provide emergency mass care supplies. I'll turn it back over to Jennifer to finish up the general budget section for the presentation.
All right, thank you. In addition to the safety departments, the general fund also includes the Public Works and Community Development Administration departments, which has a combined budget of $47.1 million, or a 3.1% increase over the prior year, due primarily to labor agreement adjustments and the purchase of capital outlay equipment for the replacement of aged computers, fleet vehicles, and copiers. Also included in this category are the anticipated savings of $3.5 million in the CalPERS employer contribution rate for employee pension costs. The ending fund balance for the general fund is projected to be $35.5 million next fiscal year. Reserves are fully funded at $26.7 million, and after deducting for future commitments, the available fund balance is projected to be $8.4 million for one-time appropriations or the paydown of debt per budget policy. Measure S is the 1-cent transactions and use tax approved by Temecula voters in November of 2016. This revenue source became effective in April of 2017 and has generated nearly $240 million in revenue. Measure S is technically considered a general fund revenue. However, we have accounted for it in a separate fund to maximize transparency. Fiscal year 25-26 Measure S revenue is expected to increase by 2.7% over the prior year to $40 million. Total appropriations are budgeted at $42.8 million and are in line with the Council's policy guidelines prioritizing public safety, asset management, capital projects, and community services. Public safety funding of $13.7 million is recommended to augment the sheriff and fire department operations by providing funding for 11 sheriff's deputies, Fire Station 95 staffing, and the future replacement of the fire ladder truck and inspection vehicles. Asset management funding of $2.25 million includes the $1 million deposit into the streets maintenance fund and a $1.25 million deposit into the facilities replacement fund to ensure adequate funds are available to maintain the city's infrastructure and facilities. Capital project investments for 25-26 total $8.8 million, which will add to the $34.3 million allocated in the current fiscal year to fund 72 separate capital projects. And general and community services funding totals nearly $18 million, which is primarily dedicated to TCSD operations and the library. A 5-year forecast is also prepared for the Measure S fund, with revenues projected to increase between 2.5% to 3.5% per year over the next 5 years. Annual appropriations gradually shift from funding CIP projects towards funding higher levels of public safety and general services over time. This slide illustrates the gradual shift of Measure S appropriations from CIP projects to public safety and community services as the cost of these services increase over time. Within 5 years, 41% of Measure S revenue will support public safety, 49% will support TCSD, leaving 10% for future CIP and asset management funding. As part of the budget adoption in May, a separate resolution approving the schedule of authorized positions and salary schedule will be included in the operating budget agenda item. The salary schedule reflects the cost of living adjustments per the agreement with Teamsters Local 911. Base salaries for executive, mid-management, confidential, represented, non-represented, and project employees will become effective the first pay period in fiscal year 25-26. Total authorized positions for fiscal year 25-26 is increasing to 202.2 full-time equivalent positions, including the 5 council members and 1 authorized but unfunded position. 1 new authorized position is being recommended within the Public Works Department. A Signal Technician 1 will assist with the operations and maintenance associated with the traffic signals and residential streetlight network. To complement the authorized staffing, the city also employs a total of 90.4 full-time equivalent, part-time or project positions in various seasonal and support positions. 7 additional positions are employed which are limited in term and intended to support the implementation of the city's new financial system and to backfill staffing for various leaves of absence. Staffing for the sheriff and fire departments are provided through contracts with Riverside County and CAL FIRE, and sheriff staffing includes 117 sworn deputies and 18 community service officers, and fire staffing will increase to 79 fire personnel to accommodate the new CAL FIRE 66-hour work week, and will continue to provide 4 firefighters per engine and ladder truck. I will now turn the presentation over to Director of Community Services, Erica Russo, who will walk you through the TCSD operations budget.
Thank you, Director Hennessy. Mayor and City Council, as you know, the mission of TCSD is to improve the quality of life for our residents through our facilities, programs, services, and events. We strive to ensure that everything we do makes our community a healthy, safe, connected, and ultimately a desirable place to live, work, and play. We like to call this creating community through people, parks, and programs. And 91% of respondents to a community satisfaction survey said they were either satisfied or very satisfied with this effort. However, the cost to deliver such extensive programming and amenities is substantial, so we must constantly evaluate the cost to benefit balance and look for opportunities for cost recovery. Let's take a quick look at what TCSD includes. Broadly, TCSD can be thought of as having 3 main subdivisions: recreation, arts and culture, and human services, all supported by an administrative division that handles budgets, contracts, grants, policies and procedures, and procurement. Recreation includes the classic Parks and Rec divisions like aquatics, sports, classes, recreation centers, parks, rentals, and events. Arts and culture includes our theater, museums, art, library, and Sister City program. And human services, broadly speaking, encompasses our inclusive and senior services and related facilities, workforce and education development programs, and homeless outreach and prevention. There is some overlap between categories. For example, some of our special events and classes have a strong cultural focus, and functionally, our libraries also fill an important role in providing valuable human services to the community. Nevertheless, these 3 big groupings can be a useful way to think of what TCSD does for the community. This slide shows some of the net costs associated with operating these divisions, factoring in staffing, operational costs, and any offsetting revenue. TCSD welcomes residents and visitors of all ages into 11 facilities, shown here with blue stars, ranging from full-service recreation centers like the 26,000 square foot Ronald J. Parks Community Recreation Center and the Intergenerational Margarita Recreation Center, down to the one-room harvesting community classroom. Temecula is also fortunate to have the largest and busiest library in Riverside County. With an annual operating budget of approximately $1.4 million, Ronald H. Roberts Temecula Public Library welcomes over 1,000 visitors a day during its peak summer reading season. Our 2 year-round pools provide swim instruction, fitness classes, and water safety to all ages and abilities, and an annual program cost of $2.2 million. The rest of TCSD's non-aquatics facilities together cost approximately $2 million per year to maintain. Temecula's historical investment in creating and maintaining active and passive parks, shown here with green pins, contributes to the city's overall livability, positively impacting the community's mental and physical well-being as well as its aesthetics. The city's 42 beautifully maintained parks have an annual maintenance cost of approximately $6.7 million. These amenities include 2 premier sports parks, 4 pump tracks, 2 hockey rinks, 2 lake parks, and several newly completed capital projects, including a new skate plaza at Long Canyon Creek Park, a newly renovated dog park at Mike Nagar, and the $3.7 million 17-court pickleball complex at Ronald Reagan Sports Park. Signature events like the Rod Run, the 4th of July Spectacular at Ronald Reagan Sports Park, Santa's Electric Light Parade, and New Year's Eve Grape Drop help define Temecula's regional and even national reputation and create a unique sense of place. Our professional and hardworking special events team produces over 40 special events each year, locations shown there in red pins, at a total cost of approximately $1.4 million. We recently hosted the Southern California's premier car show, the Temecula Rod Run, which brought over 40,000 people to Old Town on each day of the two-day event. Events like these require extensive staff support from public works and public safety teams as well. For instance, Rod Run this year cost approximately $226,000 to produce, including approximately $151,000 in staffing. Homelessness is one of the most pressing issues affecting communities across the country, and the City of Temecula dedicates approximately $1.7 million, not including the costs associated with RSO and fire support, to mitigating the impacts of homelessness on individuals, businesses, and the community as a whole. Through collaborations with partners such as Social Work Action Group, Community Mission of Hope, RSO, including the CBAT team, and neighboring agencies, city staff in multiple departments have been able to create a framework of support and accountability, which has helped 43 individuals exit the streets so far this year. Additionally, the city has removed 48 dangerous and unhealthy encampments this year, which represents a 118% increase over the same time last year, due primarily to the city's recent commitment to mitigating encampments on private property that pose a significant threat to public health and safety, including the risk of fire. Additionally, this year, staff rolled out a new program, Flexible Family Assistance, made possible by Council's appropriation this year of $140,000 to help address the most pressing gap our team had identified in our community, which was a lack of rapid rehousing options for families with minor children. Through that allocation and the annual CDBG allocation of approximately $10,000 for homelessness prevention and diversion, we have prevented or ended homelessness for 78 individuals this year, including 44 children, all of them verified residents of Temecula. For next fiscal year, the TCSD budget reflects revenue totaling $21.3 million. Program revenue, which includes the income from contract classes, registration fees, day camp, aquatics, and theater tickets, is projected to be $2.9 million. Although that represents a small percentage of our total revenue, it is important to continue to evaluate, and staff will continue to look at opportunities for cost recovery and ensuring that our fees are appropriate. Measure C, which is the $74.44 parcel tax dedicated to park programs and maintenance, is expected to be $1.9 million. And the Measure S contribution of $16.5 million provides the remaining revenue necessary to cover the operations to facilitate TCSD's wide-ranging services and programs. Operating expenditures of $21.3 million are increasing by 2%, primarily due to negotiated labor agreement adjustments. As shown in the TCSD 5-year forecast, revenue and expenditure levels are anticipated to grow between 2 and 4.5% per year as the district continues to enhance its services and programs offered to the public. I will now turn the presentation over to Director of Public Works, Ron Moreno, to walk you through the city's capital improvement program budget.
Thank you very much, Director Russo. Good morning, Mayor and Council. The Capital Improvement Program is a comprehensive 5-year plan that addresses the capital needs of the city. Capital projects are those that cost over $30,000, have long-term lifespans, and are generally non-reoccurring. The fiscal years 26 and 30 CIP includes 97 separate projects with over $894 million in total costs. The city has secured funding sources totaling $624 million, or 70% of the total CIP. The remaining $270 million is unspecified at this time. However, before construction begins on any of these projects, a funding source will be identified. Between the current year and next fiscal year, it is anticipated that CIP spending is programmed to exceed $234 million. After an extensive review, CIP projects have been reprioritized to ensure funding is available for several high-profile projects. This slide illustrates the significant efforts of the city to leverage outside sources of funding, which has yielded tremendous results in recent years. City funding sources contribute roughly 35% of the total CIP funding, with outside sources such as federal and state grants, Riverside County's transportation uniform mitigation fees, and Measure A, as well as other specific funding sources, making up the remaining 65% of the total CIP funding. The CIP includes only one new project this year. The local roadway safety plan project was added to identify and analyze safety concerns and develop a list of recommended improvements. As mentioned previously, this year staff conducted a comprehensive review of all projects to address rising costs and ensure adequate funding is available to construct several high-profile projects. The outcome of this review resulted in funding reductions for 10 different projects, as well as the deferral or cancellation of 9 projects. This slide summarizes the list of projects that increased by more than $500,000 since the CIP adoption last year. Several project costs have escalated due to inflation and modifications to project design. In some cases, the increase reflects the addition of project costs for fiscal years 2029 through 2030. The highlighted projects are those that have been designed and are nearing the construction phase. To accommodate the project cost increases, several other projects were reduced or removed from the 5-year CIP. A total of 10 projects reflect budget reductions necessary to free up available funding sources to cover the projects highlighted on the previous slide. In addition to create available funding, 4 projects have been moved to the Futures project list, which reflects projects that the city is tracking beyond on the 5-year time horizon of the budget. Also, 5 projects have been canceled as listed here. The larger of the 2 canceled projects have significant operational budget impacts for which the city does not have the ability to fund currently. The circulation category contains 24 separate projects totaling $632 million in project costs. The I-15 French Valley Parkway Phase 2, the city's largest capital project at $139 million, opened to the public on April 28th of this year. Hundreds of thousands of drivers now enjoying a drastic reduction to their commute time every morning. Oh, excuse me, every evening. French Valley Parkway Phase 3. No rest for the weary as we waste no time jumping into the next piece. We have awarded the design contract to T.Y. Lin International, the same firm that finished Phase 2, and have initiated the design and the environmental revalidation processes. Pavement rehabilitation projects reflect the continuation of efforts to maintain the quality of the city's roadway system, one of our largest assets. We have over $12 million in pavement rehab projects planned over 2 years, including repaving Rancho Way, Felix Valdez, and Santiago roads. Additionally, we've added a $1 million placeholder for the reconstruction of the roundabout at La Paz and Yanez Road, which will be separated into its own project sheet in the adopted budget and increased to $3 million to cover the full project reconstruction, I should say. As part of Flood Control's Murrieta Creek improvements, the phase known as 2B is out to bid now. However, it has been rescoped due to increased cost. The project has now been downsized to extend from Rancho California Road only to via Montezuma. This will have impacts to the city's Diaz Road expansion project, the Murrieta Creek Bridge project, and the Overland Drive widening. Impacts include drainage and structural modifications that will need to be analyzed since the full improvements will not extend to Winchester Road. The Diaz Road expansion project includes widening and improvement of Diaz Road between Rancho California Road and Winchester, followed by the final phase between Winchester and the northern city boundary. Diaz Road will be the northern extension of the Puesca Mountain Parkway, formerly known as the Western Bypass. The Murrieta Creek Bridge at Overland, another project that leverages a significant amount of grant funding. This bridge will connect Overland Drive from Enterprise Circle on the east side of Murrieta Creek to Diaz Road at Avenida Alvarado on the west side. Approximately 88% of participating costs are grant funded. Overland Drive widening. This project will widen the roadway from Commerce Center to Jefferson and will alleviate the existing bottleneck of traffic attempting to travel from eastbound Overland to northbound Jefferson. The project complements the prior Overland widening project, Enterprise to Commerce, and the aforementioned Overland Bridge project. A new roundabout is proposed at the intersection of De Portola and Jedediah Smith Road, which will utilize $800,000 in federal grant funding from the Economic Development Initiative. The Yanez Road Phase 1 project includes widening between Tierra Vista, the Duck Pond entrance, and Rancho Vista Road, including funding from the Arrive residential project. The infrastructure category includes 49 separate projects totaling $117 million in total project costs. Fire Station 73, the gym and garage, will add a new gym structure as well as apparatus bay. Design and environmental documents are anticipated to be completed by this summer. Fire Station 84 renovation, a new separate gym structure as well as interior renovations to the living space and training room will be constructed at Fire Station 84. The project is expected to be bid in late June 2025. The comprehensive general plan update. City staff will be utilizing a consultant to lead our efforts in updating the 2005 general plan, our blueprint for continued development and management of the city's future. The Parks and Recreation category includes 18 separate projects totaling nearly $60 million in total project costs. The Ronald Reagan Sports Park Skate Park. The project plans to replace the old facility with a more modern design while paying tribute to what users have enjoyed at this skate park for the last 30 years. Construction is anticipated to begin by the end of the year. The Ronald Reagan Sports Park Hockey Rink. This project features a new roof structure with push-pull fan covering the entire play area and seating areas, a new sports tile play surface, new dasher boards with safety glass, as well as ADA and other improvements. Construction started in April and is anticipated to be completed by the end of the year. The Uptown Temecula Sports Park. As part of the project reprioritization exercise, funding was identified for this still partially funded project, and $3 million was converted from unspecified to development impact fee funding. $9.5 million in funding remains unspecified at this time. The playground equipment enhancements for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 include a $400,000 renovation of the smaller playground within the Ronald Reagan Sports Park and a $500,000 renovation of the playground in the Paseo Galante Park. Both playground projects will not only provide for modern updates, but will also improve ADA access to these amenities. A newer category of the CIP, Community Facilities District bond-funded projects include projects that are funded with a combination of CFD bonds and developer contributions. Butterfield Stage Road, completed between Murrieta Hot Springs Road and Rancho California Road, which is essentially complete. Nicholas Road extension and improvements, starting construction between Calle Girasol and Butterfield Stage Road, includes over $14 million in CFD funding, with the remaining project cost to be paid by Woodside Homes, the developer of the Somers Bend development. I'd like to turn the presentation over to our Deputy City Manager, Luke Watson, who will discuss the city's affordable housing projects.
Thank you, Ron. The City of Temecula serves as the housing successor agency to the redevelopment agency, otherwise known as the housing successor, and is responsible for the investment of $16 million in housing bond proceeds of the former RDA. Utilizing this dedicated funding source, the City Council has approved funding agreements for 2 developments, which will provide an additional 143 affordable units. First, the Las Haciendas development, located in the Uptown Temecula Specific Plan area, which was recently completed, provides for 77 multifamily affordable units. Second, the Vine Creek development is located at the corner of Pujol and Main Street and will provide 60 affordable units, 12 of which will be set aside for residents with special needs. After the city's $4 million Community Reinvestment Program funding allocation towards this project, the development was successful in acquiring tax credit financing, and the project is now fully funded, and this project is currently under construction and nearing completion. In addition, the CIP includes a new project partnering with Habitat for Humanity on a third Habitat-led affordable development that will include 6 for-sale, owner-occupied townhomes available to low-income families and individuals. This project will give the city a relatively rare opportunity to add another affordable for-sale home ownership product to the city's affordable housing inventory. Finally, the city recently utilized affordable housing bond funds to acquire a vacant site in the Uptown Temecula Specific Plan area. In addition to the property itself, the City Council allocated $1 million in CRP funds, which are to be contributed directly to the project. Staff has released a request for proposals, or an RFP, which, upon receiving developer responses, will kick off a competitive process to select a development partner. I will turn the presentation over to the city manager now to cover future discussion items.
Thank you, Luke. As you've heard this morning, the city has much to be proud of and has a substantial list of programs and projects that are underway. While the budget concentrates mostly on the next fiscal year, we also remain forward-looking and strategically plan for impacts to future budgets as well. I have a list of several items I would like to seek direction from the City Council this morning. Last year, the City Council directed me to explore Care Solace, this service, and we entered into a one-year pilot project with Care Solace in 2024 for $166,000, and it is coming to an end. This is a subscription-based program that affords all Temecula residents, businesses, and employees access towards mental health navigation and assistance. In front of you, we left the 12-month statistics that they provided. They are offering the city another year at a discounted $70,000, and we understand Temecula Valley Unified School District will also be under contract. Placer AI. The City Council directed staff to explore the utility of Placer AI, artificial intelligence platform, to achieve greater efficiencies and collection of data that can assist in decision-making across several departments and policy platforms. Since directed, we had a pilot demo that Mayor Pro Tem Alexander participated in. In front of you are some sample reports we received complimentary for measuring special event visitor journey information and impacts, such as the Rod Run in 2025 over 2024. Annual discounted pricing is estimated around $45,000 to $50,000 per year with a 3-year agreement. Demos of this platform can be set up for the balance of the City Council if directed to further evaluate and assist in any decision-making process. Senior Services Master Plan. In fiscal year 2015-16, TCSD staff drafted and completed a very well-written and robust Senior Service Master Plan at the direction of Council Member Ron and the direction of then City Council. We have left a copy of the document in front of you today. This City Council recently approved the discussion of a future agenda item discussion at the request of Council Member Ron that we consider updating this plan. TCSD staff would be challenged to add this to their current plate and updating the plan in-house to save dollars unless the City Council wants to prioritize ahead of other TCSD work. If the City Council wants to prioritize this for contract work, we estimate it'll cost between $100,000 and $150,000. Wildland fire mitigation measures. In response to the devastating wildfires this past January, the City Council directed city staff to explore and outline potential wildfire mitigation strategies for the city and the surrounding areas. Following that discussion, staff have been asked to begin developing a draft work plan and cost estimates for several proposed initiatives. One of the first actions was coordinating with Caltrans to clear the vegetation under the I-15 freeway where the Temecula-Murrieta Creeks meet. We're pleased to report that this project has been successfully completed at no cost to the city. Another proposal is the full implementation of the city's existing Community Wildfire Protection Plan with an estimated cost ranging from $300,000 to $500,000. In addition, the development of a new citywide CWPP, or Community Wildfire Protection Plan, is being considered. This more comprehensive plan would require funding in the range of $500,000 to $1 million. An additional component of the work plan is the creation of a citywide community wildfire outreach and education program. This program would include the launch of a FireWise initiative throughout the city, the formation of a Fire Safe Council, and proactive engagement with local homeowner associations. It would also offer residents guidance on how to harden their homes against wildfire and propose hosting an annual Wildland Urban Interface Day to promote community awareness and preparedness. Each outreach and education program component described above would have its own cost figure. Much of the outreach and education program cost is anticipated to be within the fire department and city staff time. Further, part of the directed work plan included a component for the development of a citywide evacuation plan. This initiative is underway as part of the comprehensive general plan update and will be carried out using existing consultant and city staff time. The final component of the work plan is exploring the possibility of securing funding and support for the development of an emergency operations center with enhanced functionality. While more research is needed, early cost estimates place the investment at $5 million or more. TCSD long-term fiscal strategic plan. As you heard and saw our analysis of future forecasting, we would like to recommend charging the City Council Strategic Fiscal Ad Hoc to work with city staff over the next 8 months to begin creating a TCSD work plan that is multi-year and reasonable in its approach to safeguarding operational quality by fiscally managing the quantity or scope of those same operations. We would anticipate periodic updates and policy direction routinely coming back to the full City Council over this time. Accelerated debt and liability paydown. As you saw, we are making great progress sticking to our 7-year debt payoff strategy and have remained very disciplined. We have 4 years remaining and are prepared to stay the course. City Council members have routinely inquired to me what it would take to accelerate the payoff with one-time dollars and investments we have deposited into our pension trust. We can save an entire year and finish this project in 3 years with an additional one-time payoff this year and next. The question to the council, is this something the City Council is interested in pursuing at this time? Next, the CIP prioritization workshop. While I believe we have been managing a very aggressive CIP program for many years and annually checking in with the City Council on priorities and sourcing colors of money, we would be in favor of scheduling a workshop in late summer solely dedicated to exploring each and every project in the draft CIP, discussing the status of those projects, funding shortfalls, and ultimately the City Council assigning formal priorities 1 through 4. Next, a housing workshop. While I will acknowledge we recently conducted a housing workshop in 2024 in concert with the Ready Commission, and we have an active 2-council-member working ad hoc subcommittee on supportive housing business, I continue to field a variety of ideas, observations on housing-related matters. So, the question to the City Council this morning is, do you believe this topic deserves another full council workshop to allow every member of the council to provide input to myself and the staff and the working subcommittee? As you've heard throughout this presentation, the success and prosperity that Temecula enjoys is not by accident. From our original City Council to the 5 of you today, and from the employees and city managers past and now present, the Temecula way is very intentional. Temecula is a place where exemplary public safety and sound fiscal stewardship is expected, as much as being both business and family friendly is the norm. This is how we build greatness and maintain excellence. In the documents and actions proposed today, the city remains blessed with an excellent workforce and is financially stable over the ensuing 5-year period, with reserves fully intact, structurally balanced, with revenues exceeding expenditure projections, and a robust capital improvement program that is 70% funded. While our local economy remains uncertain, we continue our practice of conservatively budgeting our revenues to reflect this trend. City staff will also continue to monitor revenues and will bring the City Council an update if any adjustments are deemed necessary. I want to give a special thanks to the entire executive team, the department budget analysts, and our finance budget team, starting with our director, Jennifer Hennessy, Assistant Director Ward Comers, our Fiscal Services Manager, Paula Majors, Budget Manager, Catlin Dorsett, all of whom represent the dedicated way, the other-centered way, the best and the brightest way, the Temecula way. And as always, an extra special shout-out to our media services team of Jonathan Hall and Chris Dreer, who once again taken our presentation today to the next level with the updated videos, the drone footage, and top-notch graphics. This concludes our presentation this morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and we are available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. I want to kick it off to my colleagues. We can just kind of go through this, and we can see, when we go through the annual operating budget and the TCSD, as well as the capital improvement program, if we hit any of the list for future direction from City Council as we go through our City Council comments here. Before I kick it off to them, I just want to say thank you. I know you just thanked everyone on our city staff, but a special thank to you, Mr. Aaron Adams, as well as your executive staff, Lieutenant Pearson with Riverside County Sheriff and Chief Lubin with CAL FIRE. Thank you for being here. Thank you for that presentation. As Councilmember Stewart always says, Temecula is a great city to be a city council member in because of that being the Temecula way and the balanced budget that we see here before us today. So with that, I will actually want to kick it off to Councilmember Stewart to start us off today and we'll talk about the annual operating budget, TCSD, capital improvement programs, any thoughts, questions, and we'll go from there.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you put up the last slide, the one we were just looking at? That one. Okay, first, before I go to that, the homeless $1.7 million, does that include the camp cleanups? Okay, that's what I wanted. And then as far as the accelerated debt liability pay down, I am wholly in favor of finding whatever money to shave another year off of it. I mean, I think that long term is going to free up money that we can use for, budget things that we're going to want to do. And then as far as the CIP workshop, is that where we would make any suggestions of additional CIP projects? Is that what you would envision?
Yes. Short answer is yes. But if you have particular ideas that you want to put on our radar, now's a good time for us to hear that.
Right.
But what I envision is sort of coming back to you again, probably no later than August. Early in the fiscal year is better for us because of contracts and planning and charging the team. And then really going down all 97 projects.
Right.
And basically starting and having you guys, either push things out, push things forward, stay the course, challenge us to explore partially funded projects or things that need to just remain on our radar and we need to revisit each and every year. So like to hear from you if you have something that's not currently in the CIP that we can at least begin thinking about.
Well, I have two things that are not currently in the CIP. One is the Santiago property right there at Santiago and Inez. I would like to see us really consider putting a community garden there with substantial parking. And that way we can utilize the parking for major events in Old Town. That way, if for some reason we had a shuttle service that went between just going up and down Santiago, dropping people off, picking them up, a constant bus that goes back and forth, I think we could park quite a few people on that property along with having a community garden. So, because that property is going to be problematic for us for many reasons. So this would create a low impact 98% of the time for that community around there. So that's one project. And I still think we need to put a sheriff's station in the city of Temecula on our CIP programs. I think that's something we need to look at long-term, short-term, whatever. Again, that's why I was asking about the workshop, because I think we need to have that conversation. What struck me when I was watching the whole presentation is the fire stations that we own. The city has invested in fire protection and fire stations for a reason, and that's because it has to be close to, the impacted zones that, need fire protection. Well, we need police protection too. And this city is a very unique city in the fact that we have so many different types of assets in this city. We have the Old Town District. We have the wine country just outside of the city. We have the casino just outside the city. So we have a very unique policing profile. And I think it's time for us to start thinking about having a sheriff's station localized in our city limits, closer to our assets, that going forward, to me, it makes total sense in the fact that, that's why we have all these fire stations. And I've been a very big proponent of this from the very beginning, and if we can get a dedicated captain to the city of Temecula, as Sheriff Bianco has mentioned he would consider doing, that would really localize our policing ability. So I would like to see that go on to our long-term CIP projections, thoughts. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. Councilmember Ron?
Well, so first off, excellent presentation. I'll say in the couple of years, and I mentioned this earlier, that I was off council, the only meetings I actually paid attention to were the budget hearings. Because I think that's kind of the backbone of what, drives the city, and a lot of the decision-making that goes on here becomes sort of consequential for, everything that the various departments do. So really do appreciate the time and effort that's gone into this. I also just want to say, really appreciate the sensitivity analysis that goes into this as well. I know, as a statistics and economics wonk, that becomes a very important tool for us. And I think you've highlighted a couple of features projecting out 5 and 10 years that we need to take very seriously now, so we can avoid, this is and we said this during Measure S years ago and said this is a very slow-moving Titanic, and we can start steering now to avoid, any potential budget shortfalls. And I think we need to have that conversation here today and make sure that we're shoring up our long-term budget. That said, from a principal standpoint, our investment in the city, from my perspective, needs to focus on public safety, infrastructure, and then I think we need to take a hard look at those investments that we make, whether it's parks and recreation, whether it's public works investments, or housing, or whatever it is that we're doing that generate revenue. And I've said this before at recent meetings. As we get our quarterly tax reports, we're starting to see major shifts in the revenue for the city, and that's leading to some of the results we're seeing in these projections. And again, every dollar that we spend, from my perspective, starts with public safety first, infrastructure second, and then anything past that, we really need to have a key eye toward revenue generating to help shore up our long-term budget. If we're just making decisions based on, things that we like or want to see, that's great, but, and I'll use the example. And, we did Public Works did a great presentation on our street maintenance programs. But in that presentation, we're at, 71%, I don't know what the metric is, the index for, the quality of our streets. And if we want to get to a higher percentage, of 70 or a higher number of 76 or so, it's like a couple $1 million. But getting up into that, 85+% investment was a close to $10 million increase in our annual expenditures on streets. And so we as a city have to ask ourselves, are we good with, we have good streets in Temecula. It doesn't take you but driving, and I won't say, into what adjacent cities, but just driving across the borders and seeing a difference in the quality of our streets. So, the closer we get to perfection, the more expensive it becomes. And so is it wise for us to invest in, that additional $10 million? And my answer is no. We're doing good. And I'll relate that to two other things. One is the investment in community services. I was told, or you mentioned today, that it's 91% satisfaction with the events and things that we're doing. That's extraordinarily high compared to most communities. But we're also seeing a structural deficit looming in community services. So again, from a council's perspective and city's perspective, do we have to be 100% happy? Are we okay with 90% happy, right? And that needs to dictate that investment. And then I'll say the same thing, Stu, you and I have disagreed for years on the sheriff station thing, and I knew it was going to come up, and I'll disagree again, because we're consistently in the top 20 safest cities in the entire United States. So investing $100 million in a sheriff station, does that move us into the top 5? or does it move us from 20 to 19? I mean, it's a serious investment in something, and I'll say the difference between police and fire is police are mobile. They're patrolling neighborhoods. They're a mobile resource. Fire is not. They're going from a station, and so those are strategically located. Now, I know we've invested already in a lot of our assets in town, including the sheriff's station here at City Hall, to help improve, that access for deputies and ability to sit at a desk and do what they need to do there, but not have to go all the way to French Valley. If we're not meeting that, and if there's something to do that can improve our response times or improve the work of our deputies and public safety, I'm all for it if it moves the needle. But I'm just not confident that these types of investments move the needle. I gotta have a lot to say because I've been gone for a bit, but so bear with me here. Going back to sheriffs and CAL FIRE, one of my concerns, though, is the dramatic increases in the costs. Now, I get it, we're moving to a 66-hour work week, and the state has shifted those responsibilities and staffing and resources, and it's fantastic. I think for the firefighters' health and safety and everything else, I think these are good moves for the state. But we knew those were coming, right? And the state was very transparent in the way it dealt with its outlay and letting cities who contract or counties who contract kind of have a heads up that, hey, this is looming, prepare for it. The sheriff's department, however, not to beat you guys up, but this kind of came as a surprise. It was a substantial increase that we had to do mid-year budgets. And so, I'm admonishing the sheriff's department here today saying, come on, we're the largest contract, I believe, that Riverside Sheriff's has in a community. Number 2? Okay, it's a pretty big contract. Could you give us a heads up of what's going on? And we had this problem 10 years ago, which is why we ended up, supporting a different sheriff and everything else and a different infrastructure. And all of a sudden we're having the same problems we have, a decade ago. And I don't know how we fix that, but there has to be some urgency there, because if this happens, you saw what it did to every department in the city having to reduce budgets in response to, this immediate shift. And we're not going to take away from public safety. So, how do we improve that relationship in the future? I think that needs to be a priority, and that transparency in their process. I mean, they start these negotiations and discussions months in advance, and I'll admonish the county supervisors here as well, because they all more or less came from local government, and city councils and all that, and they know the impact they've had when they make these decisions. They wouldn't have accepted this had they sat in our seat, so why are they doing this? And why aren't they contacting the city manager's office or anybody letting us know this is happening? It's just unacceptable. I got a lot more to say, but I'll stop there and say the last piece is Measure S. As we look toward the future of Temecula, I would argue that Measure S, despite its, perception and unpopularity with some, that was one of the single most important shifts in Temecula's history, being able to shore up our long-term budgets. And when we talked about Measure S years ago, we said this isn't just something that's going to help us for the next 5 years. This is something that's going to be consequential for the next 50 or 100 years. And it's proving out that it is. But again, I'll go back to the point that if we're going to be fiscally responsible, we need to think hard and long about what it is we're doing with those funds in the next decade or two, and make sure that we're making those decisions. I'll say also on the community CIP budget, I agree. I look forward to having that conversation with everybody on the CIP, because there are some important projects. I love the idea of the gardens, and we talked about that years ago. I think these are great concepts. But again, I would caution, saying all of our decisions here now need to have some sort of cost-benefit analysis, return on investment. And when I say that, return on investment is health, well-being, quality of life, but also a fiscal return as well. And so we need maybe a discussion when we talk about the CIP and community services to talk about, can we develop a better policy or a better way forward to be able to give us those tools to more strategically analyze the economic impacts that these decisions are having now and into the future. And I'll pause there and let somebody else speak. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you. Councilmember Schwenk?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to thank staff and for all the time, effort, energy you put into this. Thank you. It's much appreciated. This is my 7th budget workshop, and like Spin mentioned, you make it easy for us, right? This year's a little bit different. The tone's just slightly different, but I don't necessarily think it's the Titanic. Maybe we're a cruise ship or something, and we're not quite doomed, but we do have some really tough decisions that I think that we need to make. I just have a few notes. Obviously public safety is number one, and something that stuck out to me, the Metro team here in Old Town is 54 hours a day. If you sort of take that 20-ish thousand hours, whatever, a year, whatever, 54 hours a day in Old Town of teams down here. So thank you for that. You certainly made an impact on our community and the business as well. Measure S, 240 million since 2016. I think, someone says it every year, like, where would we be if it weren't for Measure S and the residents that passed that? So thank you to the residents for that. We will have to go through quite a bit of the line items, I guess, as for our city and sort of prioritize. And the theme, I think, that I'm going to sort of try to articulate is for years this city has led in many, many ways, right? Financially, and this is maybe the first year we haven't had someone come and speak at one of these workshops sort of asking for something, right? And maybe we need to think about sort of like fostering a community where community-led projects come forward, right? And whether it's through nonprofits or the business community, and sort of like, instead of the city building everything or doing everything, we sort of think about what does a community look like if you could do public-private partnerships on like a real public-private partnership. Maybe it's the Uptown Sports Park, right? One of the projects that was deferred from this year's budget was the trails at Ronald Reagan Sports Park. And I think that's something that's ripe for a community-led initiative, right? If you get community together and build some trails, kind of hearkening back to the community prior to incorporation where they built Ronald Reagan Sports Park, right? Like, get back to some of those fundamental ideals of like what it means to be a part of this community, versus the city sort of taking everything on. I think there's a lot of value in that. So I think for me, going forward, that those are going to be some of the themes. As far as the sort of that list at the end, I think I'll just give you my thoughts in order of maybe importance. I think the debt paydown strategy is the most important thing that we can do. If when I leave here as a council member and we've paid off our debt, or on track to pay off our debt, that'll make me sleep well at night. I think that's really important that we do that. So let's just do that. I believe that the CIP workshop is important. We have the quality of life master plan, and if you sort of pull out the timeline and you get all these projects and kind of overlay that on the CIP, I think, and Mr. City Manager, you mentioned, like, you do a really good job. Your team does a really good job sort of taking the pulse of the council and bringing projects forward. But I think it is it's worth a larger discussion. We all have the things that we care about, and we bring different things to the table, and I think prioritizing the CIP and sort of looking at some of the projects that are on there, and maybe there's a little bit of funding there, but we're probably never going to do it. Or maybe potentially this council doesn't see value in doing it. So that's probably some value there, is doing that workshop. The TCSD budget, I really hope that's sent to the Fiscal Services Ad Hoc Subcommittee so that we can really spend some time and go over some things as far as staffing and for years we've been really wanting to bring things to the community, and we bring a new recreation center, at Margarita Recreation Center, and that comes with staffing, and that is tangible. It definitely touches the community in a really, really good way. But I think we have to really think long term. I also don't really want it to go overlooked, and I don't think it is, but the impacts that TCSD make in a community are massive, right? And we can't always quantify them in that sort of ROI way. But there's a lot of literature on third places, so it's like your first place is home, your second place is work, and third places are libraries and parks and things like that. So we need to think about that and some of the value that they bring. But we also have to be mindful of what is nice to have, and then what do we need to have, right, to function as a city. So I think Councilmember Ron kind of spoke to that in some ways. We really need to prioritize that in some meaningful ways. I think some of the conversations we can have about, and we will have about the commissions, I think there's opportunities for some ad hoc commission work. I can see the senior master plan falling under that, the sister city relationship and organization. I can see those things falling under these ad hoc commissions. So I think that's worth sort of exploring. So there's a couple others. I believe that the housing workshop, we should absolutely have that. The sooner the better. If we can do that over summer even. I mean, I know we're kind of scheduling out some more workshops, but I think that's an important conversation that we need to have here in the community, and we should have it. Let's see. The AI, I think, is a really fantastic tool. So that Placer AI, if you look at some of the data that we were given, I think that's something that we should invest in. But I do think we should probably do an RFP. I think we should tailor something. This seems great. I just don't know what else is out there. One thing that I want to sort of note is some of the data we got, this is for the ROD Run 2024 and 2025. And so for the ROD Run this year, there was 40,000, almost 41,000 visitors to Old Town. And so you have this massive event, you've got 40,000 people, that's amazing, which it is. I love the ROD Run, it's kind of fun. But April 4th and 5th, Old Town saw 36,000 visitors. No events, nothing in Old Town. So there's something to trying to understand, the dynamics of that. And then you look at the cost of the ROD Run, it's $226,000, for an additional 5,000 visitors. I think those are some of the conversations that we'll have to have. Now, I'm not suggesting that we get rid of the ROD Run, but these are things that we need to know, right? We need to understand, who's coming and going, and it kind of plays into the conversation we've been having about events. The more information we have, whether it's AI or parking data, those are important things to know so that we can make informed decisions as council members. Because we can all make, sort of gut decisions up here, but we're not really doing the community a good service if we're doing that. So try to have as much, good solid information as possible. I think that's it that I have. Kind of see where everyone else lands and circle back if I have to, but thank you very much. Appreciate you all.
Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem?
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you, City Council, for everything. I think a lot of good discussion has been we're having here. I love the fact that the initial video that was put up to kind of capture us to the beginning of this meeting with looking at LA, and I think was it Oakland? Yeah, it was, we look at it and we're like, wow, we are really blessed to have what we have. But again, discussions like this help us to keep what we have. And we have to keep that in perspective. And my predecessor, one thing I absolutely love that he always said is Temecula didn't happen by accident. And it was meetings like this and conversations and really specific items in order to be able to roll out what we have. And I'm just very appreciative of that and all the work, obviously, that's been done by staff and by even all the formal council. several areas here that I just want to touch upon. As we look at public safety for Riverside Sheriff, I have to agree with Matt Ron. I was really kind of blown away a little bit, the fact that we didn't have a little bit more time to budget. I know that we were pretty much about completed with the budget in itself, and I'm very thankful that staff had the ability to do what they just did, because they jumped through massive hoops, and I got to see our staff and talk to everybody, our city manager, and they really worked diligently to make sure that everything was ready to go now. And so I just want to say a thank you, because I saw just a little bit about what you guys were doing, and it was just a great job. So keep up the good work. But then again, for the sheriff, you guys do such an incredible job, and everything you guys do. And so for me as well, public safety, last 4.5 years has always been priority, whether it's fire, whether it's police, and we want to make sure that that stays at the forefront no matter what it looks like. And looking at the forecast of the budget, that's always been Temecula's way, that we always want to make sure that we are in a safe situation. That's why I love the fact that also we brought in the Southwest Station, which now allows, as we saw, the ability for more time here in Temecula, which just gives us more opportunity for more safety. So thank you to that. I want to agree. I love the fact that we are going to be a city in 2029 that's going to be debt-free if we continue to stay on track and we continue to forecast. But we do see, obviously, with the forecast that there's going to be a shift. And that shift could be something similar to what maybe LA or some of these other cities had. And thinking about what Councilmember Zach Schwenk said is, yeah, we're moving a Titanic, but the really great part right now is that we see the iceberg up ahead. And we have an opportunity to move the ship in order to be able to avoid a collision, an accident, something that could be catastrophic for our city. And that's what we're doing here. So I think there's a lot of good opportunities for us to kind of get out of the structural deficit coming up, and then I think it was 2031, 32. And I see that as part of, doing things like we just did over the weekend with ICSC, bringing in new companies, bringing in different, talking to different developers, seeing how we can continue to make Temecula great and continue to bring in revenue as well for our city as well. And that's going to be more and more challenging as we're almost completely built out at this point in time too. But having the ability to look at staff and what they're capable of doing, what they've done, I can still foresee just great things coming down the pipeline. So again, the iceberg isn't here yet, but we can see it coming up. 107. Moving on to sheriff. We have 117 sheriffs out there right now. We have, I believe, eight teams. Again, want to keep that moving. We have 79 fire personnel with 2 inspectors, and we need to make sure that, again, that's a priority. So let's keep moving on that no matter what. I do want to say with Stu, I love the fact that we can continue to look at the possibility of a sheriff's department, but just looking at the projection of funding right now, I don't know if it's something that we can say, hey, we can definitely do this, but again, continuing to keep an eye on it and making sure that maybe in the future, later on, that's something that could be a possibility. But right now, we really got to make sure that we're doing what we need to structurally, because we do have a good place right now for fire and police. Let me see. Another area was homelessness. A lot of people over the last couple years have been telling us that we don't really do much, but when I take a look at $1.7 million that we're putting, and then we have a new flexible family assistance plan, and we're doing what we're supposed to do as a city and as a community to take care of our own people, I just want to say hats off and applause, and we need to continue to keep that up, continue to work hard to making sure that our community itself is taken care of, and it's clean and it's a good quality of life, and we have to keep that in mind as well as we continue to look at the videos in LA and such. So for me, just looking in the future, main things are going to be first responders, and I agree with mainly all my council members here. First responders, infrastructure, staying debt-free, obviously, and I think we're right on path. And if we need to throw some more money at that, I'm definitely I'm okay with that. And I think that's actually a great and very wise idea. Continue to bring businesses in here, so continue to stay on the mark with that. Let me see what else we have. I think a big thing, and we're good at this, is not wasting money. and we just have to be really, really shrewd and careful on how we're doing this. But we have to make sure that whatever we're putting our money at, again, like my colleague said, we have to make sure that we're getting a return on investment at this point in time to make sure we're staying afloat. If we can take a look real quick at those previous future items at the listing. I think that's 2 of them. And there was one before then, I think. Sorry. Okay, there were just 1, 2, there we go. Just a couple on these. Just to give my council members a little bit of heads up, I had an amazing conversation, myself and Erica Russo with Care Solace. We didn't really know how this was gonna end up as far as for the last year, but I've been very happy as I'm looking at the numbers and hearing that we just basically reduced from $2.50 per person down to $1 per person here. Just in April alone, if I can just share this, that this program, because of this, gave the opportunity for an individual, 21 individuals just in the month of April, who had self-harm and suicide ideations, got to save 21 individuals on that day. And that's worth something. You know, I think about during COVID time, how many would say, well, one person is worth it. One person. And I look at what we're doing here, and it's definitely worth it. Not to mention the 329 people that we've had the opportunity to lead to therapy, and the other 246 for teletherapy. It was almost 70% of the total people that we were able to help out, including all of these other different types of hospitalizations, behavioral analysis. So I think this is definitely something we should try to do at least one more year and see if we can possibly get a shift with working with another organization to see if maybe they can take over that contract in the future. Placer AI. I end up seeing the fact that we, number one, are a definite data-driven organization. As a council, I think looking at specifically Matt Ron, Councilmember Schwank, myself, I think all of us really, we love data because it really gives us an understanding for the future and where we're at. So when we ended up taking a look at the events and the closures in Old Town, it got me thinking about Buxton, that I had an opportunity to sit with them in a meeting and understand what they do, which got me thinking, can we start tracking how many individuals are coming into our city? I then had an opportunity to talk to Ms. Betsy, and she had already, I guess, had Placer AI kind of on the forefront. She was already looking at it, and it was a great timing to take a look at how we can invest in something that we can find some money for possible savings in the future, and really just an opportunity to really take a good look at what we're doing and how we're spending money. One thing I do love about Placer, and again, I'm not married to it, I did love the fact that they do not track individual people. They don't have their name, all this information. They're just basically tracking apps like Waze and different things to be able to track people. And I think this will give us a better understanding about our parks, how many people are visiting, how many people are visiting during different events that we're having. Are some of these events worth it? Or do we need to change something, especially as we're coming up having the discussion with TCSD? This could be a really good money saver and just a better forecast for, I believe, the council and for staff as well. Let me see if you guys can go to the next one. TCSD, long-term fiscal strategic planning, I'm in. I think that's a great idea. I think we need to revamp at some of those. I think we were looking at a possible, was it 20% increase, Ms. Hennessy? Possible, or? A model, okay. So definitely something we could take a look at. Again, the accelerated debt liability paydown, I'm all for it. I hate debt as it is, so let's get out of it. CIP prioritization workshop, I think that's a must. I think that could really help us prioritize and just have that good conversation, whether it be about sheriff's departments or any other project that's going to really benefit our city. And our housing workshop, I think this is actually a great idea. I think this is something, I know we had a workshop in 2024. I would ask the council on this point, is it possible would you guys be willing to do a, maybe like instead of doing a workshop, since we seem to have a lot of workshops coming up, possibly just doing a semi-annual or quarterly update on housing during our meetings. So that way we're all updated. It's a constant update instead of just one time. And I just think that would really give a better overview for the year or for the future. So I don't know if that's something my colleagues would be up for. And that's all I got.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. So I'll start off with what City Manager Aaron Adams said, is that there are budget deficits all across our state, including our state in totality. But we are not one of those cities, and we are not one of those municipalities that is in a budget deficit, which is a good thing. We do have a balanced annual operating budget, and our 5-year forecast looks promising. Like Director Hennessy said, it goes into our 10-year forecast is when it starts to get imbalanced. So I think we need to be very cautious and wary, and I think all of my colleagues as well as city staff is on the same page with that. I would like to just essentially cut and paste what Councilmember Ron said into my little spiel here, but the Temecula Way in priorities is public safety, which we always make sure that we fund first and foremost, infrastructure, including our capital improvement programs, and then everything else to include our TCSD. And I think, the elephant in the room that we've all kind of hit on is that TCSD. And I'll just hit on a few things here, is that it has grown exponentially, which is a positive thing, because everyone loves the events and they love the creating the place that brings to the city, but we also have to be weary of the costs associated with that. And it comes down to that want versus the need. Some stats here that I wrote down. The expenditures for TCSD are about $21.3 million, and the revenue was right around that same $100,000 less. But a lot of the revenue comes from tax measures, which I think is an important thing to point out. Let me see here. The Measure S is 78% of the revenue that goes to TCSD, and Measure C is 9%, which accounts for 87% of the revenue. So just to put it, very elementary, 87% of the quote-unquote revenue that goes to TCSD does not come on behalf of TCSD events themselves. The events and TCSD themselves bring about $2.9 million out of the $21 million revenue. So it's just an important fact. And it's important to note that city councils in the past and this council have been okay with subsidizing TCSD because we know the quality of life that brings to the city, but we just have to be very weary and intentional. I said this with the street closures, I said this with the events, moving forward, especially with that, I think the 7-year market starts to become imbalanced. We have to begin now being very intentional on what events we do, what programs we put on. So I think it's very important moving forward that we take a good hard look at our TCSD, and I know that'll go to the Fiscal Ad Hoc subcommittee, and I look forward to those continuous updates on that, because to me, that 10-year forecast, TCSD is probably the biggest item. And I'd like to also hit on, that contract, the Riverside County Sheriff's contract that came quickly before our budget hearing here today in the last couple months. I believe it was 3% across all departments that we had to, 3.3% we had to essentially cut to ensure that we had enough funding for our public safety. And just to reiterate what my colleagues here said, is that more time for us as a city is better. And I know you know that. I know the sheriffs know that. But I have to reiterate that. Moving forward, there are some things on the CIP, the capital improvement programs, that I am looking forward to. I know that a lot of our citizens are looking forward to, and they've had questions about. One of those is the Yanez Road improvements. That is coming. The widening on Yanez is coming. We have had some, private land issues that we've been trying to deal with, but we are looking forward to widening Yanez and improving that traffic. I am 100% behind the Fire Station 73 and 84 improvements to improve those gym and garages and training room reservations. 100% behind the Uptown Sports Park, looking into what that could be, because that's a huge future project. I know the details they'll be worked out, but that'll be an awesome addition to our TCSD department and our Parks department as a whole. I'm 100% behind the Ronald Reagan Skate Park improvements, the hockey rink, the playgrounds. These are all things that the city wants and the city needs, and a lot of those were community driven. A lot of those individuals, they speak out. Social media is one of the biggest things that people utilize to get their thoughts and their questions and their inquiries out these days, and the Ronald Reagan Sports Park has been at the top of mind for our community for some time. And we also have a big project that's going to be completed soon, which is the Nicholas Road extension. I know we've been looking forward to that with the development of Somers Bend, so that'll be coming here pretty soon, and we're excited to see that move forward. I also want to hit on the affordable housing projects that we have. The 4 projects totaling $20+ million. Some of those projects have special housing for special needs. We're going to having 6 for-sale homes with Habitat for Humanity, which will be another awesome project. I believe it's the second project that we've done with them in the city of Temecula. for the for sale homes. And we also have that Uptown Housing Project, which the RFP is out, and we're waiting to see what developer comes in and wants to build that area up. But overall, it's just important to note that in cities in the years past, it's always been a balanced budget. But with the 10-year forecast, we have to start looking at that imbalance, and we have to make the necessary changes prior to that imbalance to ensure that it remains balanced. And a few things I want to hit on here. Lastly, if we can, the future discussion items, and we'll go one by one because I want to hear each of my colleagues' thoughts and perspectives on each one of these. But a big thing for me before we go into that is that I think we all agree on the accelerate the debt liability pay down. So I'll kick this off with the future discussion items here, and we'll go one by one, and I'll start that off with my thoughts and perspectives. I know the Mayor Pro Tem went one by one as well. So for Care Solace, for me, I think it's been a great program. Prior to signing that contract, and I'm not sure when that contract must be signed, but I do want to look into working with our hospital here in Temecula to see if it's a program that they can take over. I know we gave them, I forget how much money, maybe $250,000, or is it $1 million that they
We
have?
actually gave them $1 million, and they're due back to give a presentation before the city council on sort of status update on that was a COVID program money that we gave them for mental health, and I think they're probably about 50-60% spent. So the conversation could down the road definitely lead to, do we want them to use some of the balance of our money to do something like this, or do we want them to just kind of take over a Care Solace mental health navigation tool? So for sure, could be done.
Absolutely. So from my perspective, prior to signing the second contract with Care Solace, I would like to speak with the hospital, hear from them, hear their thoughts and perspectives on it before moving forward on that. With Placer AI, I think we all agree data-driven policies are normally the best policies, and this is something that gives us that data. I think for me, prior to signing a contract with Placer AI, I would like to know what else is out there, and I would also like to have clear, I guess, solutions that we're looking for with Placer AI. If we sign a contract with a company like this, and what are we going to do with the results that we receive, specifically for events, for all of that, so we know, we have a clear definition of what we're looking for and what we're going to do after we receive any of that information. I would like to hear from Councilmember Ron on the Senior Services Master Plan and the wildfire mitigation measures prior to me, making a decision on that, because those are both his programs, and I want to see what his thoughts and perspectives on that. So if we can move forward to the next slide, please. I've already touched on the TCSD long-term fiscal strategic plan. I look forward to the Fiscal Services Ad Hoc Committee coming back to us, and I think that is the biggest one, and being very intentional with our staffing, with the events we do, and ensuring that imbalance in 7 years does not take place. I am fully on board with the accelerating the debt liability pay down. This actually coincides with the next bullet point, which is the CIP prioritization workshop for the accelerate the debt liability pay down, which would save an additional $1.5 million in interest. I am all for that. I would like, actually, if we do that, which I hope we do, is to ensure that the interest that we save, say that $1.5 million, we specifically dedicate to a CIP project that we look to do. So with the interest that we're saving on the accelerated debt liability pay down, we put that directly towards a CIP project that would bring that return on investment back to the city. And I have my ideas on what that should be, but I know we all do. So I'm 100% behind the CIP prioritization workshop. And I'm also, lastly, 100% behind the housing workshop. Myself and Councilmember Ron, before he was back on council, actually had a housing town hall last year. That's kind of the image I have of this housing workshop. The community came out. That was very community driven. They spoke on what they thought the city needed and what they wanted to see in the city. We kind of took the hits for about 2.5, 3 hours there. But it's good, and that's what we're here for, to be transparent, to be held accountable. And I think the housing workshop is a great idea that should and should happen. So I look forward to the housing workshop, absolutely. With that said, I would like to go back to Councilmember Stewart to go through each future discussion items to see your position on them. Can we just do one at a time? Absolutely, yeah. Oh, one at a time? Yeah, we can do one at a time. Let's go through, let's do the Care Solace contract. Councilmember Stu, you want to?
I'm okay with it. I haven't seen a whole lot of data other than what we see right here, you know, the number of people that have used it. But it's something. So, you know, in this world of mental health issues, I think it's a good forward-facing thing that a city does to kind of help people who are having these issues. So I'm still good with it.
Councilman Ron?
So I am and I'm not. So you mentioned something that was interesting to me. It was the idea of getting the hospital more engaged in this process. So Care Solace, as I understand it, is a service where folks can call and get help and resources and support, and kind of directed toward this is what, you know, is available for you to help you. But at the same time, when the hospital proposed its behavioral health center, the community and others came at it with this perspective of, well, we don't want that in town because it's just a dumping ground for 5150s and drug addicts and homeless people. And it's like, hey, we're either taking behavioral health seriously or we're not. We're either bringing this out of the shadows and accepting it as a responsibility or we're not. And so for us to have Care Solace come in, a fantastic program, I understand, but then to be able to tell our residents, oh, and by the way, the treatment and help you're seeking doesn't exist in Temecula because we didn't want it at our hospital. It has to go down the road, so good luck. You know, I mean, you know, and honestly, county is supposed to be tasked with behavioral health. The dysfunction in behavioral health in the United States started a long time ago as federal and state dollars were shifted, and it keeps moving down the chain to where now all of a sudden, why isn't the county funding this? You know, why isn't the county fully underwriting this for every community in there? Because they are responsible for behavioral health. In fact, not that today's the day to bash the county, but when we originally asked for a behavioral health specialist to join our task force with law enforcement, they said I remember Aaron and I were in that meeting, and they said, sure, we'll let you know how much that will cost you. And I said, well, wait a minute. You're already getting our tax dollars to cover this. Why aren't we going back to the county and saying, this is your responsibility. This is a solid program. Murrieta and other communities are fully behind this, and you have a much larger budget, and your solemn responsibility is behavioral health. Do your job. You know, that being said, if the county's not going to do it, then this is that trickle-down effect that's been happening since the 1960s and pushing it down to, you know, the lowest level of government, you know, and I hate to say it, but where are we next with this? Do we ask our HOAs to start kicking in on this? I mean, you know, at some point it's just, you know, we either take this responsibility seriously or we don't. And so if we're going to have this conversation, I'm not comfortable signing a contract with them right now until we get some clarity on the hospital. And honestly, I'd like to know from the hospital, did they pull stakes on the behavioral health center because of community opposition, or is it purely a funding issue, which I know, you know, plays a big role in that. But, you know, at some point, I think we need to figure out what is in the best intentions of our city and either support this stuff or don't. So that's where I'm at with Care Solace.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Schwenk?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I am lately, especially, rarely at a loss for words, and I wouldn't normally do this, but Councilmember Ron summed up my thoughts quite perfectly. We're either for mental health or we're not, right? And what I've seen from the community, honestly, is in many respects disheartening with respect to mental health. So, you know, I think this is something the private market should cover, and this shouldn't be something that the city funds.
Thank you. MPT, anything else to add?
Yeah, I appreciate, is that on? Yeah. I appreciate all my colleagues and what they're saying. And I have to say, I've agreed in so many perspectives, because what is the job of local government? Is it the job of mental health? The thing is, unfortunately, because of the state of the state and the county, this is now trickling down to us. I can tell you right now, just taking a look after my meeting, the individual help for therapy, and this is here in our area, over the last, since January, was 2,710 individuals. So this is an absolute need. There was an inpatient care of 54 individuals. And again, going back to the big one, self-harm and suicidal ideation since January, there's 174 individuals. We haven't even hit June or July yet. We know that there's a lot of issues going on, people having anxiety, depression. I'm not saying it's a local issue, but right now it's at our forefront, it's at our door. And I've had good conversations with the hospital. We are in motion of trying to see what they can do, and this was kind of one of the things, can they take over this contract? I just don't want this contract to lapse and we can end up losing individuals' lives because of $1 per individual. So I'm asking the council if we can just at least have one more year of this contract, just to be able to save lives, because public safety, again, is our priority, and unfortunately, behavioral health is falling under that. And we don't want to have more issues out there because people are having problems at home or at their jobs, and it's going to be a continuous spiraling effect. And so I would ask the council for at least one more year on this contract, continuing conversations with the hospital to see if this is something that they can come alongside with us. They've already come alongside with us on other areas with behavioral health. And I believe, if I'm correct, City Manager, I know that one of the things that they did with behavioral health is they needed to expand the emergency room. That was one of their next phase, I think phase 2 coming up. So they needed to put in parking because they weren't having enough parking for individuals. And so that was, I think, their phase 2 coming up, and that's what they're putting in instead of the behavioral health. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're no longer proposing to build a BH hospital, and their modifications to their site plan and their entire development is going to be going to the Planning Commission here very soon. From there, the next stop, it will be in front of the City Council in a public hearing format. So.
Can you...
and the ED is part of their proposed expansion that was needed.
Can you just speak briefly, because this is kind of wrap into, I guess, what right now they're doing for the city right now as far as help, behavioral health-wise?
From a behavioral health standpoint, you're talking about the grant that the city gave them, right?
That, and also I know we're working on some classes right now that they're bringing some of their staff members to be able to. I think we just had our first class a couple weeks ago. If Erica, you can speak to that.
Yeah, if you want to speak to that.
Which is sort of an evidence-based, I don't want to say alternative to, but corollary to like a 12-step program, which they're rolling out with us in conjunction with our homeless outreach program.
And how is that going to help the city of what's coming from the hospital?
So we know specifically that virtually every individual we encounter who has been chronically homeless has mental and or behavioral health issues. Most of them have dual diagnoses. So this is enabling us to bring this resource directly to them, as opposed to expecting people who are currently unhoused, unsheltered, and suffering from mental and behavioral health to be able to find the transportation and make it to the hospital or another center where they would be able to access this support.
And this is, and again, going back to whose responsibility is it for mental health? And I think this can be the bridge right now to get us over to the other side, in my opinion, to get it to the community and bring this to the community. But we have a gap here right now, and so I think we need to fill that. And I think this contract gives us at least one more year, especially for $1 per person. So that's all I wanted to say. I appreciate the council either way. I'm glad we've had what we've had for the last year. I do know right now, the last thing also, Care Solace is right now up in DC currently. We were having a conversation with her. And so this is going on a larger scale with Care Solace. So I'm very excited about that. And there's some stuff coming down with, I think, Medicare, Medi-Cal maybe, that they're also working with the schools. So a lot of new things coming down the pipeline. But I would ask for at least just one more year if possible.
Mayor Pro Tem, can I just clarify something just for the group too? So 2 things. With the grant that the city gave the hospital a few years ago, what they've done with that I think is important for this conversation. They've hired a number of clinicians in this space and have been serving the demographic that the city council outlined, whether it's first responders, military, Temecula residents, folks battling mental health. And so I think it would be worth our time and the city council's time. We bring them back to a council meeting to sort of provide that in-depth update on who they've hired, what are they doing, what do their cases look like, things of that nature. So that's something we can do. To Councilman Ron's point, you're not wrong. I think historically we've seen social services that historically should be and were the responsibility of the county begin leakage and not necessarily being conducted to our satisfaction. And by default, we've picked up a lot of things that I'd rather not pick up, assuming, and the costs associated therein. But we've had to, and this goes to everything from homeless and different areas and stuff. But you're not wrong. The social services, historically, county, never been part of the City of Temecula sort of portfolio, but we've assumed a greater piece of the pie in an effort to maintain a high quality of life. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much, MBT and City Manager. Back to Councilmember Ron.
So, Mayor Pro Tem, I think you made your case, for me at least. I mean, you know, it's a good point that this program exists, people are using it, and without a solution in place right now, pulling the rug out from underneath this, if folks are aware of this and are using this service, you know, yeah, every life matters here, and everybody needs that support. I'd like to meet you halfway and maybe see if we can do 6 months, and in that interim, see if we can figure out something in a sort of like Zach was saying earlier, the public-private partnership, see if we can find a solution that integrates the hospital more closely with this, and then maybe pushes the county a little bit and says, come on, you know, this is your job. You know, we'll see if that works. But yeah, I'd be happy to at least extend this for at least 6 months.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. And I think the contract isn't up till October, is that correct? I think we still have a little time on that. It's October, right? So we have some time. And is that right? I think it was.
I thought it was the fiscal year, but I would have to double check. We implemented it. We implemented it last year in October, November timeframe. But I was thinking the contract went through the fiscal year. But I would definitely want to double check that.
Okay.
And just if it helps to clarify that dollar per person, our contract only covers the individuals in the city not already covered by the TVUSD contract. So basically, TVUSD covers everybody enrolled in the school as well as their immediate family members, and then so that's why it's $70,000, $1 per person, because we're not covering every of the 112,000 people in the community. We're covering about 69,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I would have to agree. My ultimate goal, like I stated, is to have that public-private partnership between the city and the hospital. Obviously, without that in place, I as well would not want it to lapse and have people not able to access the mental health care that they need. With that being said, I just want to make a point of clarification. If someone calls and they meet certain criteria, say they call Care Solace and they meet certain criteria, I would be remiss if they didn't directly go to the 911 system. Right? If the 5150 criteria is they're a danger to themselves, a danger to others, or gravely disabled, they essentially skip all of the behavioral health specialist that Care Solace would send them to, and it goes to a 911 system, because at that point they're a danger to themselves, and that's when RSOs and individuals like that get involved. So even if we didn't have Care Solace and someone made a claim that they wanted to hurt themselves or harm someone else, it would go directly to the 911 system, where they would be placed in an involuntarily hold for at least 72 hours. Again, that behavioral health hospital that is currently not on the hospital's master plan community plan, they would go to a different hospital that specializes in something like that. But even without Care Solace, if someone, just to reiterate to the community, if someone is experiencing a behavioral health emergency, there is the help and the care that we need to get you to the place that you need in Temecula. And with that being said, I believe that we do have enough consensus to say for Care Solace, until we figure out what we can do as a partner with the hospital, we would like to continue that contract. I know Councilmember Ron said for 6 months. I'm not sure how are we able in a position to negotiate the 6 months to a year. Is the contract on our desk waiting to be signed? Would it overlaps if the fiscal year ends here in end of June?
Yes, so I confirmed it does end at the end of the fiscal year, and we have not drafted the new contract, so we can put in whatever terms we need to on that. And a lot of times with our contracts, we write in a term, for example, 1 year with an option to extend, so then it can be extended easily. We could write in a 6-month term. We have also reached out to the hospital tentatively and let them know we were hoping that they would be willing to partner with us on this. We haven't heard back yet from them on that.
Okay. I would be in favor with what Ron stated, with having that 6-month clause in there with the option to expand another 6 months. Would we get consensus on that from Stu, MPT, or Councilmember Schwank? Yeah? Okay. So it sounds like continue that 6 months with an optional 6-month extension if possible. We will move on to Placer AI. Councilmember Stu.
Well, I am also data-driven, but I'm looking at some of the data that was driven by this AI, and it doesn't, I don't know how accurate it really is. I mean, just, time comparison, swing in 4.6 thousand visitors? I mean, did the swing in really have 4.6 thousand visitors? So a lot of this data doesn't seem real. And so that's where I'm kind of confused with the data that's being driven to us. It doesn't seem realistic. I mean, 1.3 thousand people to Old Town Barbers. I mean, 1,000 people didn't go to Old Town Barbers, It's like, so I don't get it. I don't understand what some of this data is from and where did it, how was it compiled? And, I love my AI, I love my chat GPT, but this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So that's my opinion. I'm not sure exactly what we're buying here and what is really real in this data. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Councilmember Ron.
So just for clarification, I mean, what they're, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but what they're doing is they're basically taking accessible data on, different transportation apps and other, similar to what WRCOG has done for us in the past, but tailoring it for the city of Temecula and using their algorithms to kind of tell us the inflow and outflow of folks and areas. So that said, Stu and I were just saying the same thing. It's like, how did the swing in get 4 times as many visitors as Costco on a given day? I mean, I think we could all agree that's just physically impossible. And I can't imagine the barber shop did 1,000 clients. So my guess is what they're doing is just using those as placeholders for, where people are congregating or parking or whatever, right? But I'm not sure, again, how useful that is for us as a tool. And is what WRCOG is already using for their analysis, is that available to us? And can we already tap into something that already exists? Because they're all using the same data, right? It's just different platforms doing the same thing and running different algorithms. So
yeah, maybe it'd be helpful real quickly, Ron or Luke. Do you want to just speak briefly to what we call the streetlight data, which is not really a streetlight, but I think some of that is what Councilman Ron's speaking to.
Yeah. There we go. So for streetlight data, essentially what it does is pinging cell phone data, and getting the amount of people that are passing every node. That pulls out redundancy. There's 2 phones in a car, 3 phones in a car. It does that. But it's essentially giving us traffic volumes. It's traffic data of where people are coming and going, and it's tracking the phones to see, are they in this location at this time, and then moving on to that location. It's the same type of big data that WRCOG is using in order to track how many people are coming through Temecula, how many people are coming to Temecula, leaving Temecula, how many people are just coming through and going all the way to San Diego. And actually yesterday, Chris Gray, WRCOG, kind of commented on that, because what they're able to do now is extract and see that there's essentially a third of everything. There's a third of the people that are coming to Temecula, to and from, commuters. There's a third of the people that are going through Temecula and going down to San Diego area. And then the other third is commerce. So it's FedEx, it's delivery drivers, it's people that are using the I-15 for business. So that's just an example, I think, of what you're looking for, that those are the types of information that we get from WRCOG and from streetlight data. It's purely based on traffic models and cell phone data. I'm not familiar with Placer and how it does visitors and how it does our people at a certain location. Pure WRCOG's data is purely transportation data.
Betsy, can you speak briefly to the Placer platform too?
Yes, absolutely. So Placer is an AI technology, obviously, to support decision-making, and it covers a wide variety of many more decisions that you'll make related to both vehicular traffic and foot traffic. And I think, council members too, you bring up a good point. I think we could delve deeper into that, get more information from Placer to understand these higher numbers that we saw, but we didn't do that for this report. But what they cover is not just so economic development and retail trends, both within the city and outside the city for comparison. For example, how is our Walmart doing compared to the next city? Workforce information and park usage, events, and demographic patterns like number of people traveling from outside the city of Temecula for work, for shopping, or even city events, including from where their origins are. Who's coming to the Rod Run and where are they coming from? Are they our residents or are they different cities enjoying our events? The data, like Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, from Placer at least, is anonymized and aggregated, no personal identifiers, and they focus on large trend analysis with quantities pretty much not less than 500 people. So all departments, this is one thing that all departments will be able to access the data, and primary usage is expected by the City Manager's Office, Economic Development, TCSD, Public Works, and the like, and the ability to upload data at any time. We also will have a, service member provider from Placer help us with information like seems unrealistic, so.
Thank you very much.
Could I ask
Yes.
one more? So I'm on RCTC, and we just purchased a AI program that is going to be available to all the cities who are part of the RCTC world. And so we'll actually have a login, and it's doing the exact same thing, only we don't have to pay for it. We're going to be able to have access to it. So maybe could we have someone reach out to RCTC and look at what that program is, and are we duplicating? Are we paying money for something we didn't have to? And so that's what I would recommend. Let's throw this to RCTC and talk to Aaron Hake and see if this is really kind of like the same thing, because the data I saw from the other side, from the RCTC side, is very comprehensive, and I really, really like that program. This one kind of confuses me when I look at the data on this. So, but yeah, that would be my recommendation, is maybe hold off. Let's have a conversation with RCTC and see if we're not duplicating something here.
Okay. Councilman Ron, anything else?
Just, yeah, agree 100%. Maybe we can see what tools we have available now that we're not, paying for. And then maybe identify the goals of, what it is we're trying to get. I'm a little hesitant on this because I feel like the program, the software they're using, everybody throws AI on their title now, like it's, actual artificial intelligence. And I would probably argue that what they're doing is not, but, that's just me. But I think it's a little nascent in its development to be a useful tool for us, what we're trying to get, especially when we have all these other tools that potentially are available to us for free. So,
thank you. Councilmember Schwenk.
Yeah, thank you. That's why I said we should do an RFP, right? Like, we need to get our ducks in a row. Like, we need what is the goal? Right? So, whether it's RCTC or WRCOG or, SCAG has a ton of data as well. If those things those entities are able to share data with us, which some of them do already, specific certain data. But, if we're looking at, Old Town specifically, or we're looking at our parks and sort of amenities and, well, what is the, how many people go to the new skate park? Like, these things are things that we should know, right? And whether it's this or whether it's some other, some other way, it's still important to know these things. So, I don't want us to sign a contract with Placer AI today, tomorrow, but I do think we need to collectively, at least led through the city manager's office, is sort of formulate some goals and how could we use this in, for economic development? How could we use this in TCSD? Could this enhance, some of Public Works, some of the work that you all do in Public Works, ComDev as well. Like there's a need for more data, and where we get it, if we can get it for free from our regional partners, yes, let's do that. But if we can't, or we need more granular data for Old Town specifically, let's just say it's something that I think we should explore. So no contract for me today, but let's put together something and try to figure out how to get it.
Thank you. MPT?
Yes, sir. No, I think it's great conversation. I think the whole reason I put this on was because we needed to have this conversation, and I knew there was something that we needed to talk about as far as tracking, and that's what we're doing here. So again, I agree with wherever it's coming from. It doesn't matter as long as we're getting the information needed. And I agree also with Councilmember Schwenk as well that I would love to see what exact information our staff needs to do their job. I specifically spoke with the city manager. Like, I wanted to make sure, is this something that's going to be beneficial? I don't want to just, again, throw, $45,000 per year as something we don't need. And so my biggest thing, I agree with everybody here, I'd like to see a more, I guess just a list of how this can be beneficial for staff, what our goals are. Is this the right avenue to go? I know, again, Ms. Betsy had done her research before. We sat down with them. I don't know if the other council members would be interested in getting a little bit more data, and again, still venturing out. This is nothing that needs to be done immediate, but again, the conversation is being had and it's on our radar now. So I think really my part was just, hey, let's take a look down this road and how it can help us, and just making sure again that our people and their information is not being compromised. And I think that for me as a city councilwoman is very important. So I appreciate the conversation, and I'd like to just kind of continue to dig in and see if this is something that'll be worth for our city.
Thank you very much. So I think it's going to be a unanimous no on Placer AI. And like my colleague said, data is only as good as its accuracy. And one of my favorite one on this is during the Rod Run, Be Good restaurant got 2.5 thousand visitors, and Be Good isn't open. So maybe we should notify them that they have some people that want to come to their restaurant. But on that note, we're going through a pilot program with Frog, which I relate to, similar to Placer AI, where it shows, who's in what parking spot at what time of day. And I had a subcommittee meeting the other day with city staff, and that program so far has shown that in the month of May, Front Street has not been sold out or completely booked. The 88 public spots that we have, parking spots that we have on Front Street, haven't been fully booked at one time in the entire month of May. And I saw that stat and I went, how's that possible with Rod Run going on? I've walked up and down Front Street, and every parking spot was full. But with that, with our Frog parking spaces, they said if there's a motorcycle or there's a lawn chair or something other than a car over the sensor, it may not read it. So the accuracy of data is extremely important. Data is vitally important to make the most factual and objective policy decisions, and we depend on the accuracy of the data to make those good decisions. So unanimous no on Placer AI for now.
And we'll absolutely follow up with RCTC Run. I think that's a good suggestion, Councilman Stewart, and we'll see what that looks like and share with the council.
Thank you very much. I would like Councilmember Ron to kick off the Senior Services Master Plan.
Sure. This one's easy. No funding. We did this 9 years ago when I made the request that we do a senior master plan, and I remember at the time it came in at about $80,000 to put that together. And I'll say the same thing I said 9 or so years ago was, no, we've got incredibly talented people here. I'm happy to roll up my sleeves. If we want to kick this to a subcommittee, we can do that too. But we all sat down and wrote the plan. We held the community meetings, we got the input from the seniors, and went directly to our centers and our population and said, what are we missing, what do we need? And we came up with some really good solutions, including needs for housing, supportive services, transportation, community services, all of those things. And so all I was asking was, hey, I think we checked off most of the boxes, if not all of them, on the senior master plans. So maybe it's time to just kind of go back to these folks. It doesn't have to be, a $150,000 effort by a consultant. I think we just do this ourselves, and I'm happy to, go with staff or on my own and host a coffee at the, senior center and, invite the community out and have the conversation and, update this thing as best we can and keep it to that level. If collectively, and I understand what you said earlier, is we need to sort of shift, community services time and so forth. But, I think this is something we can do internally if my colleagues agree and if they're okay with shifting a bit of that responsibility.
And I'll try to make this easy for the balance of the council. If this is something you want us to do internally, Yvette Martinez and her team do an amazing job running our senior programs, and Erica, your entire team, but we will do it. And I don't know what it's going to come at the expense of, but I had to go on the record, and something else we'll give, but we're seeing this as the greater priority, and we will make it happen. So,
Perfect. Do any of my colleagues have any thoughts or perspectives on the Senior Services Master Plan? Councilmember Schwenk?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, I guess that's my biggest fear is the staff time. We're sort of already asking a lot of staff as it is. This is another big ask. I like the idea, Councilmember Ron, of like the mayor, like I used to do like the mayor with the coffee or whatever, or I would do like meet the mayor booths or whatever. I think there's a ton of value in something, if this is something that you're passionate about, is just kind of taking this as your project, kind of going down and doing that. I had mentioned earlier, I also think it's a really great place for an ad hoc commission that can be utilized in this space. But I'm a little concerned when we say, it's not going to cost a lot. Well, staff time is a lot of money. It really, really is when you start looking at the amount of time that, Director Russo and, Yvette Martinez and among others would spend on something like this. That's just my biggest concern with it. Is it a nice to have or is it a need to have right now?
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
Being one, I would say that it probably is something that could be looked at. So I'm confused with the 100 to 150,000 unfunded. So that's what it's going to cost in staff time? Is that what we're predicting?
No, that would be the cost if we hired a consultant.
Oh, I see. Again, I'm kind of up in the air on this one. I see our population and I see it aging, and especially for Temecula, because I know Marietta has a lot of senior communities, whereas Temecula has a lot fewer senior communities, which concerns me. But we're not really seen as senior friendly as I think I would like us to be. And so even with the Mary Phillips Senior Center, that's a great place, and people do take advantage of it. But I don't even know what this looks like. So I wish I had more information on this senior master plan. What does it entail? What is the purpose of it? What is it to quality of life issues for the seniors? Is it, the senior community services end of it? Is it? So I'm kind of, I don't know what to say as far as, because I don't have enough information about it.
Got it. Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. MPT?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I agree with Councilmember Stewart. I think I need more information on this. I've looked over the master plan here for the senior services, and I think if anything, as I'm looking here as well, I see that there are a ton of community partners in here, and I would love to see more community-driven opportunities to be able to fulfill the needs of the seniors. But again, I don't know what that is. So whether we get a subcommittee or even some type of task force on that, or something small, it doesn't have to be huge, but I'd like to get more information. And, this is done how many years ago again? Did this start?
10, I believe.
10 years. So I'm sure that goals and needs may have changed. I mean, we're looking at kind of a different community in a sense. So I don't exactly know what the needs of the senior citizens are. And I would like to maybe get more information from them from a subcommittee. So I think that would be a great start for this next step.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I would agree with the ad hoc subcommittee. I think this is a perfect opportunity for that. My recommendation would to have Councilmember Ron and Councilmember Stewart on that subcommittee to hammer out all the details and bring it back to full council when the time comes.
Is that because he's a senior?
That was because he was a self-admitted senior, yes.
No, I appreciate everybody. I mean, I think we're blowing this way out of proportion, to be honest. I mean, it's a 25-page document, roughly, that we all sat down and wrote based on some community meetings and, some effort on staff time. I don't see this expanding much beyond that. We have a lot of, we need to maybe update some of the demographic information and that sort of thing. But I think this is a, city and a council and I like the idea of maybe putting together a task force on this of folks in the community to kind of lead this charge and do it ourselves, roll up our sleeves. I helped write the report in the first place and, I'll do the same this time. We're not asking for, incredible amount of staff time because we didn't, have to tap into that last time either. And Kevin, you were community services director at the time, but I don't remember this taking that substantial of an effort on staff time, and I wouldn't want to do that this time either.
Yeah, you're correct, Councilmember. Respectfully, it actually did take a lot of staff time, and thankfully you stepped in to kind of help us get there. And so the only thing that I would just remind the team, and Erica, I'm sure, can step in herself, is that what is the true timeline for this? Because as pointed out in the presentation, community services is basically encumbered throughout the summer with all the existing programs that have been discussed today. So in terms of realistically getting to something like this, we're looking at the end of summer or maybe the end of the year or maybe next year in order to do it correctly. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we want to do. I think also that part of the senior services master plan was included in the community services master plan. And I believe the consultant discussed how staff assisted with the legwork, but that a lot more effort was needed in order to truly flesh it out. So again, it depends on what you want. If you want just a quick update, yes, it could be a staff assignment, but again, keeping in mind that staff truly is encumbered with other existing programs and efforts. If you want something that truly provides some value and some use moving forward, then I think we should take the time to do it correctly. And if that's the case, there's a recommendation for a working group in order to do it, such as a task force. Yeah. I'm sure Erica or others can speak to it in more detail.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'd like to see the task force or the subcommittee move forward on this if we can get that approved today. Our seniors are an important part of our community, and we've given them, a lot of support over the years, but 10 years have gone by, and it's time to show them the respect and dignity they deserve as important part of our community. And if we can't roll up our sleeves and figure this out and prioritize our senior citizens, not quite sure what we're doing as a city. So I'll keep advocating for this, and you know, I'd be happy to work with Stu on this and come up with a plan or at least a list of objectives that we can identify.
All right, yeah, I would completely agree with task force or ad hoc subcommittee, whatever you want to call it, the limited term committee. I am all on board, and it sounds like the majority of council would be, but I think we just need clarification whatever you want it to be. You want it to be called a task force, you want it to be called an ad hoc subcommittee, whatever you and Stu want. I am fully supportive of that.
Okay, just so I'm clear, and is Randy in the room? No? Yeah, there you are. We're not going to use an existing subcommittee, but the recommendation is to form a dedicated group, Councilman Ron, Councilman Stewart. So I think that'll have, we'll go through the formalities, we'll form it, we'll bring it to the full council, and then we'll commission the work, and we'll go that if that's the direction. So we can turn that around fairly quick.
And we can commission that work to start after summer.
I'm calling it an ad hoc if it's just the two of you. Is that what we're saying? At least work with two council members and staff? Okay. Then that's what we'll agendize.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, moving on to, also kick this one off to Councilmember Ron, wildland fire mitigation measures.
Yeah, so, I mean, bottom line on this one is we're not doing enough as a community to protect ourselves from, emergency disasters related to wildfires. So we met as a city, we talked about all the things that we need to implement from, vegetation management planning to developing a citywide CWPP, outreach and education, evacuation planning, all of those things. This all comes at a cost, and if you're watching the state and federal budget, there's a significant focus on wildfire issues this year. However, as the grants and everything are starting to roll out, and we've realized this in the city of Murrieta, I worked with them on a grant not too long ago as well, is those funds typically are earmarked in the sort of point system for grants for disadvantaged communities, and we're not. And so for us to say, well, we're just going to do all this through grant funding, it's just not a reasonable approach. And in fact, 2 years went by where we didn't do aggressive fuels management despite the CWPP for at least the south end of town. This is a responsibility we have, and so we either take it seriously and do something about it. And I said this at the prior meeting: this is like the Golden Gate Bridge. This is a serious long-term, in perpetuity commitment by the city, because once you're done, you got to start all over again. Vegetation grows back. So what I'm asking for is that we identify a reasonable fund to begin this process as a city and put it into our annual, sort of operations and maintenance budget starting in the next fiscal year. Now, Chief Crater, when he had put some of this together, had dollar amounts that ranged, but this was an inclusive program for a lot of the services and things that ranged anywhere from, and Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, it was like 350 to 500,000, something like that.
Yeah, that was the number I think that we had presented in the staff report that went to the council, was an estimate or range of 300 to 500. Luke, is that correct?
Yeah, that was for the annual, let's call it brush clearing or something like that. The CWPP for the citywide plan was 500 to $1 million.
Yeah.
Two different
things. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so having said that, I think for at least our initial, we know what needs to be done. Some common sense solutions can be implemented in the city almost immediately. And we saw that at the south end of town, between the county, Caltrans, the city, the tribe, everybody coming together, very rapid response. And we know what needs to be done. With or without a plan, we know we need to reduce fuels and risk in the city. And CAL FIRE is a great partner who knows how to figure these things out. So I'm asking that we, set aside $250,000 in this next fiscal year for a vegetation management plan for the city to kickstart this while we start to, implement the citywide CWPP and all that. And when we talk about our capital improvement projects and other things, we can talk about how those get funded in the future. But again, this is one of those things that, much like behavioral health, we either take this responsibility seriously or we don't. And we see the consequences statewide of those communities who don't. We know the risk is real, so we either put resources toward it this next year or we increase the risk and liability. And I'll end by saying one other thing is, as we know, all the insurance costs and everything else are going up because of the perceived risk that's happening. Our ability as a city to demonstrate that we're doing the right thing with all of our properties and code enforcement and our neighborhoods and everything else that goes along with this is going to help in the long run reduce those insurance costs as the state starts to get its act together on what their priorities are for mitigation and developing better assessments for policies. So I'm just asking that we prioritize this for the next year as a placeholder until we can get our act together and deal with this as a citywide priority.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Schwenk?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I'm like, overall, I'm like supportive of it. There's a lot that I don't know about it. I mean, I feel like we sort of had this direction at a council meeting before, so I'm not sure, like, I know this is all kind of tied together in many ways. The funding, when I legitimately asked where the funding was coming at council, the response was it would be grant funding. Now it's not grant funding. So that's concerning. But it's something that I think we need to take seriously, right? Like, so at the same time, these are these hard conversations that we have to have about what do we need, right? Like, versus what is nice. This might be a need, right? Like, it might be a need. I like, how the city manager's office has been working with, some of our partner agencies and getting things done, quickly and cheaply, free to the city. So I think that's great. That last little bullet there, the funding for the EOC, and the staffing for that, I mean, that's a big ticket that no one really touched on. And we don't even know what that could cost, right? I think the estimate was around $5 million, at least that's the number I have. But the other things, they're important. I don't know if we have I don't have the list in front of me, a subcommittee that this could go to and you could work through that. I'm a little weary given the conversation we all had about, sort of our budget and concerns about spending, and we're just kind of adding to that, with, like, we have to take this seriously at some point, and we should, and especially when it's, sort of top of mind given everything that's happened in California lately. So I guess I need, greater understanding of what this stuff, the evacuation planning that's underway. So we're really talking about vegetation removal, which I think is important. We'll potentially be adopting those wildfire hazard maps next council meeting, so that's important stuff to be concerned with. I guess I just don't have enough information to commit to, putting $200,000 as a placeholder for this for next year.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
Well, this is one of those issues that, no one's going to deny that it's very serious, and it's necessary. However, I have property up in the San Bernardino County, and I'm responsible for maintaining and removing the vegetation on my property. And virtually everybody up there has to do that. So, and if not, we're fined and, everything else. So if nothing else, there should be some sort of a subcommittee that creates a policy that requires property owners and or agencies who are in possession of large tracts of land to create some sort of, clearances that our city requires. And so I don't know how much of it should be our responsibility, except for the fact us to be able to fine and or do it and then back charge them or something like that. But so is planning necessary? Yes. I think we do need to look more comprehensively at what is our wildfire protection plan. What are we willing to, how far are we willing to push, property owners? But I know up in San Bernardino County, they fined me $90 for a little clump of weeds that I didn't hit with the weed whacker. And so they're very aggressive up there and have no problem fining everybody and anybody. So I'm not quite sure what I'm being asked to approve or disapprove of here, but just based on my knowledge, every piece of property in Temecula is owned by somebody or some agency. And it should be their responsibility, and we should be able to force them into maintaining those clearances and keeping, and, and just, the success we had almost immediately with the agencies that we approached already. So again, I'm not quite sure what we're being asked for here. So I just need more information. If it's a subcommittee, something where we can sit down and say, okay, this is what we need to do as a city to protect our citizens and our, the assets of this city, then yeah, let's go there. So again, I don't have enough information in my noggin.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. Councilmember Ron, do you want to have some more things to say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to make this more simple. The state has produced maps that we're all voting on, that we've been given the information of what the risk is according to the newest models. Absent that, all you have to do is get in your car, drive around the city, and see that there's a bunch of vegetation that poses a high risk to our neighborhoods and our businesses. Not all of that is privately owned or owned by the state or another entity. Some of that is directly the responsibility of the City of Temecula. We are not actively managing, until this last year, some of those properties. We have a responsibility to do something about that, and we 100% have a responsibility to implement programs with code enforcement and others so that our residents in these high-risk areas are doing the same thing, right? But that's not what I'm asking for. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about, because like the evacuation planning, my understanding is that's already happening with the emergency management folks, and they're already working on the modeling and the information. That's already being covered, right? The community wildfire protection plan, yeah, that's going to take some grant funding or some other solutions to do that. That's not what's being asked for. What's being asked for is, like with any landscape management plan or anything that the city does, we have a risk. We can drive around the city, identify that risk, and deal with that risk. I don't know how much that costs, but I think a back of the envelope, based on what Chief Crater and other folks have said is, $200,000-$300,000 maybe to start with. We have all these other partners we've worked with to cover the costs of this. If we don't do this, and I'll be incredibly blunt with you, we had worked in Sacramento years ago with the Brown administration on the transition from the Schwarzenegger administration. They took firefighter staffing from 4-person engines to 3-person engines, and I stood there while the president of CAL FIRE told the governor's office, pay now or pay a lot more later. And the governor said, we're going to go ahead and roll those dice. I'm not rolling the dice with the City of Temecula. We pay now or we pay a lot more later. That's what we're talking about. We either take this responsibility seriously or we don't. It's very simple. There are fuels that have built up in our parks, in our city responsibility areas over the years that need to be addressed. We need to do that now. Waiting another year for us to get more clarity and planning and all that, we can do that, but you've done that for the last 2 years. And the risk has only increased in that time. And what we're seeing is not, people's concept of wildfires, if anything that happened during the Los Angeles fire siege, it should have highlighted the fact that our communities are significantly at risk, even those that we thought were completely immune from this, like the homes above the ocean on the PCH. I'll tell you what, and maybe I don't want to put our CAL FIRE folks on the spot here today, but when I drove through, if I had been on the PCH 2 weeks prior and asked to assess that property for its wildfire risk, I would have said there is none, right? That's not the world we live in with urban conflagrations and the intensity and the frequency of these incidents we're having today. So I see it as our responsibility. I mean, do I want to refer to this as budget dust? No, I don't, because it's a lot of money. $250,000 is not, an insignificant ask. But again, pay now or pay a lot more later. And we're sitting here today having this conversation, and if something happens to our community and we're not doing the most we can do to protect it, and we say, well, we needed more information, No, I think any neighbor in this community who looks in their backyard and says, hey, there's some areas in our parks and in our local responsibility area that need to be taken care of, we need the city to help. That's what I'm asking for. I don't know if it's $250,000. I don't know if it's $1 million, but I'm saying we have to at least start somewhere like we did this year. This was all approved. We had the emergency action. We did what we have to do. That helped with the south end of town. There's a lot more we need to deal with. And so I'm just asking for a placeholder in the budget for us to work with the department, identify those risks, work with code enforcement and public works and others to make sure our community is aware of this, starts doing their job themselves. Because you're right, they have 100% responsibility to do their thing because they shouldn't be the wick into our community for their lack of management that destroys homes. So we need to, so that's all I'm asking for. I don't know how else to put it. And absent, going around and creating a subcommittee and doing all this other stuff, it's like, come on, man, some of this stuff is just basic low-hanging fruit and common sense. And I would imagine that we could work with CAL FIRE and Public Works and others and just identify, 10 priority areas in the city where we could dump these funds and just take care of it. So that's what I'm trying to get done here.
Thank you, Councilmember Ron. Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm going to pass my time over to you as a firefighter, and I want to kind of get your perspective on this as well, and possibly also listening to the firefighters themselves here locally. Ron, I know you have a ton of information. I just want to get a little bit more information as well and just getting a different perspective. But this is definitely a priority. I get it. I just want to hear some more information. So I don't know who wants to start.
I'll have you, Chief, start off. Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of a new area that we're going into as fire departments as a whole and as a state, as far as developing further into this CWPP, community wildland protection plans, the insurance issues, home hardening and all that. Coincidentally, it's positioned for the department here in the county, which I'm transitioning into, and will be working closely with a lot of the cities, fire safe councils, firewise councils here within the county, which, mind you, there's only 3 right now. And all of them are here in the southwest of Riverside County. So I think to what Councilmember Ron's talking about, you guys already have the ability within the city to implement a lot of this stuff through the home hardening regulations the state has passed down, the county has adopted in their ordinances, and which I believe most of the cities have adopted for the city ordinances, which fall under the code enforcement. Speaking with our Fire Marshal Elsa, we have already kind of discussed some of this stuff, and a lot of it does fall under that. So there is the ability for not only you guys as the city to enforce and implement some of these things. So it's kind of already there for you. And speaking to Councilmember Stew's response to San Bernardino County coming and fining, it's kind of the same thing. The city can already do that stuff through that avenue. The bigger one in which we're talking about is, I know Michael Alfred is working and speaking with him and Chief Crater, the city's evacuation plan. That's huge, right, for in the event a major incident does happen. And then also the CWPP for citywide. I know Marietta is currently working on theirs, has theirs out to bid to work, and one of their requirements in talking to the chief there is it works and integrates in regionally for the partnering cities. So they want their CWPP to work regionally with whatever Temecula's is going to say, the counties, when eventually, and if the county does have them for the county areas that touch, and then city of Menifee and Wildemar, so on and so forth. So I think just having that plan, like you're saying, and then using the avenues in which you guys already have in place to get that those vegetation management areas taken care of will definitely show. And by the city showing on their properties, showing that foot going forward in good stewardship will then hopefully progress to the homeowners association's lots, the actual private the people that own their own property and manage that vegetation as well, and which will cut down any hazard for what's going to could potentially happen. So,
Thank you very much, Chief. For me, I directly correlate this to similar to our road maintenance program, where there's a balance, right? And we haven't found that balance. We haven't developed this vegetation clearance metrics. So I think it's important, I know we keep creating these subcommittees, but I think, beyond the vegetation clearance, which I'll just start off by saying the 250 grand, I am fully supportive of having that as a placeholder. But for the implementation of the CWPP, the wildfire outreach and education, the evacuation planning, the potential for funding for a future emergency operations center, I believe that would all be beneficial in a subcommittee. I don't know if that fits the public safety, subcommittee that we currently have, because this is very specific. But for the vegetation clearance, I view that as, like our road maintenance. The more you do, the more upkeep you do, the less it is in the long run. And there's that happy medium on what is that price tag, what does it look like? And I think we all know that we are unsure, right? But I think it's important to have that placeholder now in the event that there is a brush fire in the city, so that we can say, hey, we have this vegetation clearance budget. We've already done X, Y, and Z to ensure that we are protecting our citizens the best that we can. But so I guess to answer it shortly, I am on board with the $250,000 placeholder for next fiscal year for vegetation clearance, but I'm also in favor of either creating a ad hoc subcommittee for the implementation of the CWPP to get with, we can even meet with Murrieta, meet with county to figure out what they're doing. That way we're all in the same alignment, but also including that wildfire outreach, education, evacuation planning, and the funding, the possible for future funding for an EOC. So I'm not sure if I heard concurrence, but MPT, this would be a great part for you to step in.
Well, thank you very much. That was very helpful from both of you, and obviously as experts, and even Matt Ron, you as well. I just wanted to get a full perspective, especially specifically here in the city. Vegetation, I hearing this 250,000, if we have it and we can definitely spend it, I said let's do it. But I don't want this to be a reoccurring thing. I think subcommittee, we need to take a look at the areas that need to be taken care of, so we can accurately budget for them for the following years as best we can, rather than just kind of putting a placeholder on something in future. And that's where I think the subcommittee, again, whether for the safety subcommittee or wherever this needs to lie, would have a better perspective, so we can better budget in the future for that. Priority listing, I didn't know, and that was one of my questions, I didn't know if this was a priority, like a priority listing. It seems like we have some of the things that we're already doing. I love the fact that we're doing the evacuation plan. I've heard from several, just people within our community that is something that is very important to them, and also the community outreach and education, but I don't know what all of that entails. So again, I think going back to that subcommittee and making that more specific. I'd also, in that subcommittee, obviously I think we're all in agreement, I want to see some type of how much this is going to cost, but obviously I think we'll all be there, especially for the EOC, after talking to staff members. I think an EOC is great, but again, is it within our budget? Do we actually, we're doing great right now. We'd always like something bigger. Who wouldn't want the bells and whistles and all the screens? And it could always make things better, but can we actually budget for that? So that's something I'd really like to see. And continue to look at the grants, because I think one of my council members stated, hey, initially a lot of this was grant funded. What other grants can roll into this to be able to help offset our costs as well? And also for our residents. So that's where I think I sit right now. I'm okay with the 250, but again, following year, I'd like to see more of a specific plan as to how we're going to go about rolling this out after, as if we need to.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. I want to kick it off to City Manager Aaron Adams. But before I do, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like this would be best in a, not the current public safety subcommittee. This would be more of a specific wildland fire mitigation ad hoc subcommittee.
Yeah, unfortunately, legally, I don't think this fits cleanly or legally into the public safety ad hoc. So it's probably the creation of a CWPP working ad hoc, and that's probably good for the long haul. And that, I kind of heard that the council wants to see that, just kind of a working subcommittee on CWPP broader issues. But I also heard seem like general consensus on 250,000 placeholder in the AOB. We will find that money and we will program that money if that is the motion or that is the will. So it sounds like it's kind of twofold. And I'll kick it back to Councilman Ron if that was kind of like your proposal or motion.
Yeah, no, 100%. If we could get those things done, and then, look, I just want to make sure we're making progress today, not tomorrow. And the details on this, like I said, there's a lot that needs to be figured out. There's a lot of planning that needs to be invested in. But we have to start somewhere, and I'd rather start today than, a year or two from now when we finally have a plan on the shelves. So I appreciate the
And if it's
the support
250
here.
placeholder, fiscal year 25, 26, Jen and I were talking, it probably makes more sense just insert a line item inside the fire department budget. And so that's where it'll go.
And just to be clear, yes, grant funding was and is and shall remain the priority, but we don't have a citywide CWPP, so we can't apply for the grant funding, right? And then the other thing is that as the disadvantaged communities becomes a higher priority for the state, we become less and less likely, even if we had a CWPP, to get those funds. So at some point, we're going to have to bite the bullet and again say, how serious are we going to take this, and what level of protection do we want to provide for our residents?
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I have one quick question. Whether for staff or for Councilmember Ron, just out of curiosity, you mentioned the CWPP, and that was something new for me to even realize that we need that in order to be able to receive grant funding. Typically, how long does it take to create and to at least have something on the table to present for a grant for a CWPP? Is this something that could be done within a year? So just so we have a timeline for grants in the future. And my last question too also is, I know Chief Crater's isn't here right now. Where did the number of 250 come from? Is it just kind of something like, I just don't know. So those two questions to finalize for me.
Excellent questions. The cost and timeline for doing a CWPP is a year to 2 years. The funding on that comes from the state of California, but your ability to apply for those funds is based on, again, one of the metrics is disadvantaged communities. It's why Murrieta didn't get their funding a year ago when we went through the process with them. It's not an insignificant investment on our end, but they do have separate funds that are for fuels mitigation and management. The ability for, and one of the things that's not on the list is developing the, not the Firewise, what's that called? The
Fire Safe?
Fire Safe Council, thank you. The Fire Safe Council, once that's developed, is able to apply for its own grants, and if it needs, machines for chipping and that kind of thing in neighborhoods and HOAs and all the other things for their responsibility, that's something they will facilitate. It's not, up to the city to put all of that together. That's for the Fire Safe Council. So we're trying to shore this up with as many, options as possible. And so I don't have a great answer for you because I don't know, and as you're watching the state budget play out this year, I'm seeing that they're taking Prop 4 funds to shore up CAL FIRE's budget and moving things. This is not going to be a pretty end to the May revise. And so I don't know what things are going to look like. But as soon as we do, we definitely need to, apply for the grants. And they're not hard. We've already done one before. It's not hard to repurpose that and just say citywide. And it's a fairly straightforward effort. I helped write the last one. I'll help write this one. Don't worry about it. We'll get it done. As for the 250, back of the envelope. We have to start somewhere. And we know that if we're going to do a citywide management plan, we need a CWPP to identify all of those costs, but, and it may be upwards of $500,000 or more a year if we're going to take that responsibility seriously. But the weird thing about this is it's largely unpredictable because in a dry year, you're not going to have a lot of vegetation growth, right? So there's not a lot to manage. In a wet year, you're going to have a lot more. So it's very, it's a very much a flexible sort of budget. And that's something we'll need to tackle with this subcommittee and the CWPP in the future. But at 250, it's best guess right now. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Ron. Madam City Clerk, do you have clarity on what has been discussed for wildland fire mitigation measures? Ad hoc subcommittee approval of 250 placeholder? Perfect. We will move on to the next future discussion item, and that is the TCSD long-term fiscal strategic plan. I'd like to kick that off to TCSD President Swank to start us off.
Yeah, thank you very much. I kind of felt like I heard consensus on this already. Actually, the balance of it, I feel like I don't really want to cut you off, but yeah, I'll just be really quick. I'm supportive of this.
I think I heard consensus on TCSD as well as CIP prioritization workshop. consensus there. They're nodding your heads. I think I heard consensus on a housing workshop in the not-so-distant future, just city council, not joint or anything. So that leaves us with our final item, which is the accelerated debt liability pay down. And we shared a lot of numbers and through things. Jen, do you want to just either clarify anything that I said, but I just want to make sure the council's understanding this. This is the final item too, so. Then we can take a poll and see what the direction is.
Sure thing. So what was modeled here is an additional, well, let me go back. Our current plan has us paying down the next 4 years. In the fourth year, our payment would have been $6.3 million. We did a model working with CalPERS actuary to see if we paid an additional $5 million in 25-26, and then that last $1 million in 26-27, then we would be completely paid down by the end of 2028, so 3 years. By doing that, we would save a little over 1.5 million one-time savings in interest costs, and that's what was reflected here on the slide. During our briefings, there were other alternatives thrown out to, pay down an extra $10 million this year, utilizing other funds from a set-aside fund that was set up a few years back for the fire station replacement on Station 12. That is now being deferred by the state, so we have $5 million in that fund that's sitting idle until more decisions are made on the state front. So that was an alternative that was thrown out. If we were to do that, then an additional, just under $1 million of additional savings would be yielded if we did a $10 million payout this year. We would have total savings of about $2.4 million over our current plan.
I have a question. So what's the return on that, that fund that we set up for buying the fire station? Do we have a yield on that?
It does get allocated interest earnings. If the city's overall investments earn interest, then a portion of it does get deposited into that fund.
Okay. But you don't know what that is, that yield is?
It varies. It
Oh.
varies quite a bit. There's no
'Cause-
real percentage.
I would venture to guess it's very minimal. I mean, right? I mean, this was direction that we just set aside this account. And we stopped making deposits in full disclosure a year or two ago when we heard the state wasn't moving as fast as we thought they were. So the project for relocation still outside of our 5-year horizon for Station 12.
If I may, so I had sat down with finance director, city manager, and mentioned the idea that if we took the $5 million from that station fund and accelerated the payment even further, what would that result in? And I mean, arguably, it results in a 20% revenue, save, so no investment's going to get us 20%. So immediately, that's kind of a big deal. But the thought was with a roughly, $2.5–3 million savings by doing the pay down, if we take that additional $5 million out of the fund, and then make sure that $3 million in future cost savings gets allocated back into that fund, I just think it's a wise choice for us to, use those funds to the best of our advantage, pay down that debt, accelerate it much faster, by 2 years now, what we originally anticipated, and still save, millions of dollars and plow that back into that. And I think you've modeled that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the goal here, based on CAL FIRE's new timeline for Station 12, would be to recapture those funds, but with no major fiscal impact to the city in doing so. But I think a major fiscal benefit of moving these funds, quicker into pay down. So that was kind of the thought on this is, $5 million sounds good, $10 million sounded even better. So it's up to the council, I think, I would support it, but, it's up to you guys.
I missed a portion of that. Are you supportive of accelerating by 2 years the debt pay down strategy? Was that the one you were looking for?
Yeah, we're talking about, so the proposal is for $5 million to accelerate, but to put the Fire Station 12 fund, $5 million roughly into that to bump it up past $10 million for an initial payment and shave off an additional year.
Got it. Thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, well, as an investor, that makes perfect sense. I mean, anytime I can save money and get money on the back end like this, and to take that money that's on the back end and just flip it back into the bank account, you know, that we were already planning to spend anyways, that makes perfect sense. That's a great return for an investment. So I'm in favor of that too.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwenk?
Yes, thank you. So just to clarify, if we do the most aggressive pay down strategy, it would be paid off in fiscal year 26, 27?
It wouldn't quite be 2 years, but it would be probably about 2.5.
So very, very close.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in favor of the most aggressive pay down strategy.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So you got me at the words of save money. I'm definitely for this with my council. I think we just need to be aggressive and just be completely out of debt and celebrate right after that.
I think, City Manager, you have a consensus
Yeah.
on what we want to do moving forward?
No, that's impressive. And, yeah, Jen's got a question. I think I have one too. You know, so going with the, we would be utilizing the 5 million from the Station 12 reserves towards this effort. We would also be appropriating additional general fund money, as well as probably our PARS trust, which is our pension trust. I think for 2 million, I think we need to withdraw from that, which is earmarked for this purpose, to accomplish to cobble together the 10 million, ultimately yielding the savings there. But the other half of the motion I kind of heard was with the commitment to pay ourselves back, and pay ourselves back in the form either over 5 years, if that's acceptable. We could program $1 million a year for 5 years, or if we have surplus next year that we want to program for that fund. But the direction or the ask is let's make that 5 million whole within 60 months. Is that okay? Go ahead.
And that was my last question, but I did have further clarification. So the 5 million that we'd be appropriating, well, the 10 million that we'd be appropriating this year, 5 would come from the Station 12 fund, 2 million would come from available general fund balance, another 2 million from the PARS trust, and the last million we had talked about coming from the unallocated community reinvestment or CRP fund. And I'm seeing nods, so, okay. All right, just want to clarify where the funds. Okay. The 2 million from the general fund balance was originally earmarked for the Olympics, but since that's been relocated, we don't have that obligation any longer.
Sounds like there's concurrence on all the above stated. Sir, do you need anything else from us?
No, on behalf of the entire team, I want to thank the council for your support, of me, of the entire team. A lot of good decisions made today. The future is bright. I want you to leave with that and hope everyone's proud of what we're doing and what we're continuing to do. So thank you all for your support. We do appreciate it. So.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all my colleagues and, again, executive staff for allowing us to have this, and thanks for the public for watching and being here today, and we look forward to a bright future for the City of Temecula. Thank you. With that, I will adjourn this into our next regularly scheduled council meeting on May 27th. See you soon.